All right, welcome to another episode of the Deceneus Review with Alexandra Constantine and our forever guest, Phistos Ovani. And today we have a special guest, Phistos' friend Isaiah. What's up, guys?
Woo! Hello,
Hey, what's up?
sir.
Well, hey, all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you guys in a minute. Well, Isaiah specifically, but first I wanted to kind of do some house cleaning, some housekeeping around here. Once again, welcome to, I believe, the 19th episode of the best podcast on Substack. And I want to thank everybody for all the support and the growing subscription numbers and all you guys sharing and commenting on all the different posts across the interwebs. I really appreciate that, and I enjoy the constant engagement I'm getting from everybody. So please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and ask us any questions you want on Substack. That way we can talk about it, because I got to come up with new topic ideas every other week or so. But in other news, I wanted to mention the kind of strange synchronicity where, if you guys remember, 2 or 3 episodes ago, I was talking about the French and the British, and I said something along the lines of British men are more attractive than British women, and French men are the ugliest men around, but the French women are the most beautiful, which kind of set me off onto this like long obsession with French pop music from the 60s. Well, when I said that, a friend of the pod, Lisa Kuznak, in our super secret ninja chat, called me out on it. She's like, "Hey man, how about Alain Delon?" And I'm like, "Oh man, you're right. That guy is an attractive dude." And I think, even Fisto, who's the straightest man I know, would agree that Alain Delon is a pretty attractive guy. So, you know, a few episodes later, which I think it was the last one, right? Fisto and I were talking about watching films, as opposed to movies, and watching foreign films. And I got on a kick of watching French movies from the 60s with Alain Delon. And I watched the swimming pool, La Piscine, or I can't say it, but whatever it's called, the swimming pool, which is a great movie. I meant to write a review. And then, as I'm watching that the next day, my wife's like, "Hey man, did you see the news? Alain Delon died." So yeah, as I'm getting into his movies, he passes away at 88 in France. And from what I understand, Alain Delon was a pretty base dude. I mean, he was a supporter of the kind of French right wing, the Le Pen government, and he was very good friends with Brigitte Bardot, who was also one of the hottest women to ever walk around in the 20th century, also a pop singer and a movie star. And she got a lot of crap for being a supporter of Le Pen and kind of the right wing. So, and they were also animal rights activists. I think he had like 8 dogs, and there's a lot of pictures with him and dogs and cats. Anyways, I thought that was a kind of an interesting bit of synchronicity. It's not really sad that an 88-year-old died, but it's always, rest in peace. So I watched one of his famous movies, La Samurai, which is a fantastic bit of like French new cinema mixed with American gangster movies. And it, if you've never seen it, it's basically the movie Drive, but set in 1960s France. I mean, the movie Drive is I would say, a direct homage to Le Samurai. But coming up soon, I'll probably write a bigger piece on French 60s cinema, Alain Delon, and some of the movies I've been watching lately. And I do recommend you guys watch them too. Now, in other topics, let me see. It's been hot here and rainy, and it's been South Carolina. As everybody that lives in South Carolina knows, you can't really tell how the weather is. I'm sure Florida's been the same, right, Fisto?
Yeah, it's been hot and raining pretty much every afternoon. Nothing too unusual for August though, so whatever.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm getting used to it, coming from dry California. I've been here for 2 years now, so I should get used to it. I'm not, but I am going to go up north and to North Carolina actually at the end of this week, and I'm going to do some Smoky Mountain adventuring for a few days with my wolf dog and my family and all kinds of fun stuff. So I'll be gone and I'll have something to talk about when I get back next week. Now, in other news, and I kind of the main topic of today's discussion. Well, first of all, we live in fucking clown world. If you've paid attention to the news, it's just been a goddamn fucking clown world, man. Fucking brat and all this stupid shit. I'm embarrassed to even like read articles, to be honest. But
Yeah, I got to be honest, like the more I look at Substack and the more I see like in notes you have home for your notes and then you have this special tab for the Democratic National Convention.
is that I'm trying to avoid all that stuff, man. Like I know I've seen you engage with it, and
Well, I mean, I'm just throwing out the reel and see if I can snag somebody who feels like, you know, looking stupid. But
which is all of them. I mean, every single one of them is some like middle-aged dweeb with like some side part haircut and
yeah.
danger glasses and a definite Me Too face, and it's just like, fuck, man, who are these people? Like, it's just so tiresome, man. Like, I feel like,
The overwhelming, it feels like, in the Matrix, that stuff that gets pumped into Neo to feed him before he gets unplugged. By the way, I watched that movie recently again, all the cyberpunk stuff. But like all of that, nourishment that gets literally pumped up in his nose and pumped up in his mouth. Every time I log out of notes, I feel like I'm pulling that shit out of my throat
right.
and I'm about to get flushed down the Matrix into the toilet. It's just
And
like,
it's horrible because notes is
yeah,
usually good for discussion, and then like now I'm
yeah.
like, oh man, I don't care about this stuff, and it's like but I was reading the Wall Street Journal,
Oh,
and
good.
uh, and the reason that one of my friends has a subscription, and he always shares articles, and I'm like, okay, let me read that. And I came across like 2 days ago a article on Starbucks, and I kind of want to open our conversation with I'm leading to our main topic, right, which is kind of what I like to, I don't know what the best way to refer to it, but the enshittification of everything. And
Competency,
right, the
the
complete
competency crisis.
competence and crisis, but just really the garbagification of everything that goes
Yeah.
around. So the article talks about Starbucks and how they have a new CEO or CFO or some whatever the fuck they're called, and how they've changed over the last 20 years, and specifically in the last, post COVID lockdowns, how they've become a completely different store. And there's a lot of comments about people being unhappy with the new Starbucks, and there was like a investor crisis or some shit like that, which I don't give a fuck about that. But I have an interesting kind of relationship to Starbucks. I have a like a love hate for it because in my youth, I used to work at a independent local cafe, and Starbucks was the enemy. Starbucks, what they used to do, at least in California, was wherever there was a small cafe shop, like a cafe, local neighborhood coffee shop, what Starbucks would do is if they wouldn't outright buy it, they would put stores strategically around the
Hmm.
place. So
Yeah.
so it would shut down, right? And it kind of dominated the cafe market, the coffee market, for ill to a certain degree. Yes, in a way, it did. Starbucks had a huge impact on the second or third wave of cafe culture in the United States, and it brought all that to attention and made coffee popular. But in another way, it's kind of the shit lib Walmart in a way, because the kind of people that are Starbucks people don't really drink coffee. They drink milkshakes, that are slightly coffee flavored. And they've kind of ruined the idea of the cafe as a place of, sitting down, relaxing, having a discussion, reading a book, working on your laptop, or, kind of the cozy element of the all night coffee shop, which is my favorite thing about the whole environment. Um, but at the same time, traveling around the world, Starbucks is kind of a flag of neoliberalism, globalism. I used to joke around with friends when we travel that a place is civilized if it has a Starbucks, and if it doesn't have a Starbucks, it's basically the borderlands, the barbarian lands.
Even if it
And
has a McDonald's, it's got to have the Starbucks to be
it
civilized.
has to. Well, so with the McDonald's, that's inroads, right?
Okay.
But
All
once you
right.
have a Starbucks, you're first world civilized to a certain degree.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I could
Um,
deal with that.
Even I was in Kuching, Malaysia, which is in Borneo, Kuching, Malaysia, and there's a Starbucks there, which was interesting. But I've been to places that don't have Starbucks, and they're trying. The best Starbucks is actually were in Japan, and they're independently run in Japan by like Starbucks of Japan, and they do a lot of cool things and different drinks and all kinds of stuff. But Japan has a pretty good coffee culture. Out of all the places I've been to in Asia, the best coffee culture was actually in Taipei and Taiwan. There was like tons
Hmm.
of little independent coffee shops everywhere. But anyways, I'm going on another Asia thing. But what the article kind of mentioned and kind of led at was that there's been a significant lack of quality in Starbucks, specifically since they've become so app driven and kind of in and out fast foody compared to what they used to be. They've started getting rid of like all their seating. They've tried to make it very much like you know uh, fast food kind of place where like you order on your app, you go pick up your drink, and you're gone. And at the same time, it's become very expensive. And I don't know about you guys, but at least for myself, I'm always a guy that my wife and I, you know, pre-child, used to love going out, and we still do. We go out a lot for to restaurants, and we like to eat out. And I've noticed that in the last few years, um, the overall quality of service everywhere has gone down. The overall quality of like the meals you buy has significantly gone down, while at the same time the price has gone up. And I feel like everything feels janky. And that's not just the restaurants, but it's like the stores like Target or Walmart or whatever just feel a lot shittier than they used to, even a decade ago. A lot less clean, a lot more messed up, a lot more like disorganized. The quality of everything seems to have significantly gone down. And I feel like there's just an overall downgrade of all quality, which is odd to me. Well, alarming, I guess, more than odd, because, I grew up as an immigrant, and one of the things that was always like the American ideal was the high quality of everything that came out of the United States. And now I wouldn't buy an American car if my life depended on it, to be honest, all right? Um, because I know it's going to break down in a year. But it's just, I feel like the brand of American product and services has significantly diminished in the last, you know, I don't know, 5 years. And it's almost like accelerated since the post-COVID kind of era where everything is just kind of shittier than it used to be compared to my
I think,
childhood.
yeah, I think post-COVID is where there's like a pivot, like there's a shift in things. It's kind of difficult for me to think of it, to be honest with you, because I've been living in my town here for working on year number 3. So I have this strange sense of isolation when it comes to like the big chains and stuff like that. Like I simply don't go to these things enough to really have a up-to-date view on it, if that makes sense. But it's also just the kind of thing I never really pay attention to anyway. Like I go into a Target and it's wham bam, thank you, ma'am, and I'm out.
Right.
Like, and I've always been that way. I've always been that way my entire life. But as far as jankiness goes, I guess it reminds me when it comes to vehicles, like your comment about cars. I remember when I was working insurance and I was working at body shops, and everybody was lamenting, or a lot of people were lamenting how complicated vehicles were getting and all of the additional bullshit that they were adding into cars. And that was making them much more difficult to fix and much more expensive to fix because you had all these little doodads that you had to get straight for something as simple as like a bumper repair or an overhaul or replacing, anything that was related to security or safety or all the, like I said, all the doodads, cameras, my God, those things. I remember every time we had to fix an electric vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, it was an ordeal. You have a
Right.
Chevy Volt in there, and it's just, God damn it, we got to get the one guy who's certified to work on this thing, and so on and so forth.
I just got my brakes fixed on my RAV4 that I'm going to take out on vacation, and I wanted
What
new
year is it?
brakes. It's the first year of the brand new model.
Oh, okay.
So 2019, I think, or 2000 something
Okay.
like that.
So not that old yet. Not that
Right.
old.
Anyways, it was $700 today.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. I'm like, oh man, put that
Yeah.
on a credit card.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right for sure. Yeah, like I was thinking, I'm looking at my car. I've got a 2018 Versa, just, a tiny little thing gets me around. And I think it's probably going to be my last really modern car because I'm out in the country and when that thing goes, I'm going to drive it into the freaking dirt. And when it goes, I'm going to grab a 20-year-old junker and just ride that, for the rest of my life.
No, it's gonna be illegal, man.
Yeah, well, stop me. At the end
You
of the
know
day,
what?
at the
I
end,
just
stop
realized
me.
I realized we didn't introduce Isaiah. Hey,
Oh, did we
so
not? We just
we
have this
Yeah,
stranger
you
here
guys
hanging out.
hey, what's
just
up, dude? This
oh
is
no.
Isaiah. This is Phistos' friend. He is welcome to the hypothetical imaginary cafe. Go ahead and introduce yourself real fast
Yeah,
for
man.
Yeah, yeah,
We just
yeah.
rolled right through that. And
No, I'm not
see,
it's
see, this is
no,
how you know he's a nice Christian boy. He just sat there and was like, "I'll wait. I'm patient
yeah, and like
I
these
am
guys
in
patient.
these
God's
guys rant on
time. In
about
God's time."
fucking Target and shit.
No,
Jesus Christ! Hey, surprise guest, everybody, check it out.
no, hi guys. I'm Isaiah. I'm here. I'm just kind of listening in and formulating my thoughts and opinions and all this stuff. But like, no, you're right. I mean, okay, so full disclosure, I have a 2018 Chevy Silverado. I got it in December. It has 100,000 miles on it. It's new to me,
Yes.
but I'm gonna be honest with you. It's the monthly payments that I make are not worth the truck itself because I would rather have something. I don't need. So the entertainment center, like the little touchscreen GPS bullshit that they have, that on occasion will not work if it's really hot or really cold. Which in South Carolina
That's funny.
it doesn't really
If it's
get
really
that.
hot or it's really cold, it just doesn't function.
Well,
Okay.
it has
Okay.
this. It's temperamental, but like I don't. If we've gone from the days where Chevy was building trucks that were simple, easy to maintain, easy to use, didn't have all this bullshit electronic stuff, to $80,000 pickups that aren't really used in the capacity that they're built for. Like they're not really utility vehicles. They're not something that you would tow stuff with. They're not really things that you would do work with. They're luxury vehicles with a tailgate.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it pisses me off because like if I could find a decent working, you know, let's say late 90s, I would actually kill for a Chevy S10 right now. Um,
Ah,
because yeah, I know it's a small
gorgeous.
truck,
My
but
God,
but
sold. The thing I would do unspeakable acts
but that's
for
what I
something
mean.
like
It's
that.
something simple that doesn't have a lot of electronic bullshit. That doesn't have it doesn't have integrated wireless GPS or satellite radio or hell, even OnStar, although you'll never separate GM and OnStar products from each other anymore because it's impossible. But like pre telematics, pickup trucks and all that stuff are gone because everything has to be, collected, analyzed, all that stuff. I would kill for a truck that was just a simple truck. It has an engine, it has wheels, it has a steering wheel, it has air conditioning. I'm good. I don't even need power windows, man. I can do the whole old school hand crank thing, man.
Right. So,
Um,
the best car I've ever owned and my favorite car was a 1989 Toyota pickup. It was, hand crank windows, air conditioning didn't work on it. I bought it off a girlfriend for $400 because it was like salvaged and I just fixed it up and fixed the salvage title on it. And this thing was a beast. I mean, it was a little tiny Gardner truck. I think it used to belong to a security firm because it still had like the residual decal of like Castle Security on it or something like that. And it was, white and rust. And this thing was such a beast that like she got in a car accident because some like tweaker like rear-ended her and she hit the front. And I believe the radiator was cracked on it, and I didn't know that. And I drove this thing for 3 years with a cracked radiator until it finally like just poured out all its like fluid. And then I fixed the radiator and it still ran. And I just was dumb and gave it away when I moved, and I regret it to this day because it was a little manual, a little stick shift. Uh, Best car I've ever owned.
well, I can think of one from that was in my family that it changed hands from my dad to my uncles to my grandfather. It was a little. It was like a 1990s Mitsubishi. I think it was called a Mighty Max or something like that. And I remember last time I remember seeing that truck was when I was about 18 years old. And my grandfather was using it on his property, and he lived in Cottageville and here in South Carolina. And like he was still using that to get around his property and stuff. And like I'm like that truck was about as old as I was, and it was still running. Like they had to replace parts and stuff on it, but like it was a little four banger, 2.6 liter, something like that. And it long outlasted most of the stuff that would probably be on the road now because it was such a simple, basic truck. And it
Right.
didn't need to be anything other than a simple, basic truck because that wasn't what it was. It wasn't meant to be like, you know, like what is it? Dodge has this obsession with. I mean, you look at what is it, the most recent Twisters movie or whatever, which don't even get me started on that because it isn't even anyway. I'm gonna get mad if we talk about the Twisters movie
I can already hear the rage bubbling
because
inside.
but that's really the thing though is like the original Twister movie was an advertisement for Dodge, and nobody can tell me otherwise because Dodge, the Ram that was the thing that when I was a kid I loved that truck because it was beautiful, and now like just like the movie, the remake or whatever the hell it's supposed to be, the Dodge in that is this souped up looking. I don't even care, dude. Like it doesn't. That is not what any self-respecting storm chaser would chase tornadoes in. But that's beside the point. It's more largely the differences in philosophy and how the designs are. Like the truck and the original Twister was built to do for a specific purpose. Um, it didn't have all the fancy weather scientific data collection doodads on it. It was just a truck.
Right.
And nowadays it's the same thing with all this other stuff. Is like you look at the build quality in some of these trucks. I mean, there's like every other day it's like a recall. I mean, hell, don't get me wrong, I respect Elon Musk and what he's trying to do with Tesla, but you look at the Cybertruck. Have you ever seen that video on YouTube of Whistling Diesel basically demolishing the Cybertruck? Like they slam the door really hard on it, they open it, and the upholstery is just shattering and falling apart. And it's like, okay, well, this is supposed to be like an American made product, or at least a very. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if the Cybertruck is. It is made in America, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's the ugliest thing on the planet. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
That
saw one
alone.
on the
That
street.
alone.
I saw one on the street the other day and I pulled up right next to it and I looked at it. And the guy driving it was a total douche because you have to be a douche to drive that thing. And it looks like a fucking pixel from like a 1990s like Nintendo 64 video game. And
Yeah.
Is it uglier than the Pontiac Aztec? That's the real
Yes.
no, it
question.
is. It
Yes.
is
That
uglier
is the
than
ultimate
Pontiac.
question. All right, then forever it shall be consigned to oblivion.
Yeah, no,
As
it
far
Yeah.
as
is.
I'm concerned, that
It
is the pinnacle of ugly trucks.
it looks like a doorstop of some sort, and it's just
Yeah.
hideous. I don't know. How is it a truck? Doesn't a truck require a bed?
Yeah. It has like a little integrated. I guess you want to call it a tonneau cover almost, where
It's
it's
kind of
it.
like an El Camino sort of thing.
Yeah, like it rolls up in the back, and you can put stuff there, and it'll roll back down. But like the majority of the interior is all plastic, and I mean, well, I guess that's probably true for a lot of vehicles. But like I said, they slammed the door on this thing. They slammed all four doors, and every single time they would open the door, like the upholstery and the all of that would just start falling apart and splitting apart. And it was very satisfying to watch, honestly, because it's kind of I don't know, watching something like that get destroyed is kind of fun. But I was like, a lot of people paid into it with the expectation of a quality product, and they got this. And then you have people who, and I think this is a larger issue with Teslas in general, but there are people who are saying that like the car would run out of battery completely, and either they'd be locked out of it or locked into it, and they can't get out because the door locks will not engage without battery power. So
That seems like a flaw.
that
Yeah.
seems,
It
yeah,
seems like a major
yeah, that seems like a
point of
lawsuit waiting
failure.
to happen.
I feel like that would be useful if you're, postpartum and you're trying to drown your kids. But for like real people, when they get stuck in water and they have to get out, that's and things of that nature. That
Well,
that's why the locks are. It's a manual, mechanical thing.
when Teslas came out or when they became like real trendy a few years ago, I had a bunch of friends that bought them, and I was like, you know what? Let me ride in one of these real fast. And I got in, and I hated it. It just has no personality. It looks like a plastic piece of shit with an iPad glued on it. And I don't know why people like them. I don't even care about the electrical part, the electric vehicle part, but they're just ugly. And I don't know. I feel like I'm not one of those people that is utilitarian. I don't really care that much about like I feel like I'm okay with people spending a lot of money on things, right? That's perfectly fine. But if you're gonna spend a lot of money on something, it better have a level of like class and quality that matches the price point. And I don't want to spend 80 grand or whatever on a car that looks like one of the rides at Disneyland, basically. And it's just like I don't get it. I don't get why people like ugly shit. And this is me, and I
Yeah.
drove a Mini Cooper for like fucking 10 years almost, and those interiors were amazing. Like they had a style to them, like they had like some riz. Um, and if I was wealthy, and that's why you guys should subscribe to the podcast so I can be wealthy, uh, I would buy like a vintage car. I'd buy some Jaguar or some Mercedes from the 70 convertible, with like leather seats or something, because I feel like they just made that stuff much nicer. I mean, crap, even economy cars from that era seem nicer, like Volkswagens and stuff, and like the Beetles. There was like there's a vibe to them that modern cars just don't have. I mean, my Corolla that I drive to and work, it's my work driver, has like no personality whatsoever. It's
I
just
mean,
a
I mean, you look at like you look at the types of cars on the road. Like, what color are they primarily, and what type of vehicle is it primarily
like
nowadays?
a white Toyota.
Exactly. So, I have this theory that maybe back in the day, let's say the 60s, 70s, back during like you said, the vintage times where had the Volkswagen Beetle becoming kind of a popular thing. Uh, the pony car wars. And I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like a huge car guy, but I do like cars. I like racing and stuff like that. I was a huge NASCAR fan for a
Oh,
very
you're from
long
the
time.
South. You can't help it.
Exactly. But we when you look at that era, it wasn't just motivated by styling or luxury or anything like that. It was also motivated by the desire to be the best at something. That's why you would see like Ford would come out with the Mustang, Chevy would come out with the Camaro, Dodge would come out with like the Charger, the Challenger, whatever. They would always try to one up each other by putting something that looked good, was powerful, exuded uh exuded power and that's just using the muscle car wars as kind of an example. But then you look at like some of the luxury car makers like Jaguar and Aston Martin, and of course, maybe not so much Lamborghini. I don't think Lamborghini came around until like a little bit later, but like Ferrari, for example, they all competed with each other on the world stage. Um, they all had to take what they put on the roads, or and matched up with what they had on the racetrack, and vice versa. And there was always this element of like handmade precision, quality, um, and honestly passion. Like nowadays, you look at the vehicles that are out there, and they don't have any kind of passion to them. They don't have any
Right.
kind of passion to the designs. It's always like white Toyota, silver SUV. In the generic sense, almost everything that I see now is a silver SUV, and it just becomes more and more bland. There's not as much personality. There isn't as much um, and I think it's because people have stopped looking at like cars as uh, I think in America in particular, there was a time when cars were kind of an expression of freedom in a general sense, not just an individual sense, but in a general sense. Because nowadays, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people talking up the Dodge Hellcats or whatever, and I'm like, why do you want a Hellcat? Why do you want a Dodge Challenger Demon or whatever? It's like, other than the fact that they're going away and they're going to be switching over to electric, that I completely understand that. But like,
It's because they want to be
even
annoying in the neighborhood, all loud and
right,
shit.
right, and it's not.
You
It's
know,
yeah.
just it strikes me, nothing's really been the sale since Dale ascended, right? That's essentially what we're discussing here.
Yeah, when
Raise hell, praise Dale.
raise hail, praise Dale.
Yeah, but listen, I think what you guys are talking about, and like as I'm sitting here listening and thinking, bland.
Yeah,
It's because our culture has moved into a position. Take the electrics, take the switch to electric. It's bland. Cars aren't celebrated anymore. Everything's just turning into the mush that I just, it's turning into that mush that gets fed to you as you're sitting there in the matrix.
yeah.
It's a reflection of the culture. It's a
It
reflection
is.
of humans suck. Everything we want sucks. Caring about anything sucks. Believing that there's any kind of future, it's turning into this bland, bureaucratic, state-run slop,
It,
lack
it's
of a better term.
it's
And when it
about
goes, oh, sorry,
efficiency. It's
yeah, go
about
ahead.
efficiency and minimalism now, and the best
Not even,
possible. I
not,
guess.
not even efficiency. Just because I mean,
Yeah,
who's it efficient for?
Right.
the
Shit
people
breaking down.
making it, the
Yeah,
people making it, because what they do is if it
yeah.
breaks down, then they get reimbursed in some capacity or whatever for parts and labor and all that stuff, and it almost feels like it's a racket, you
It
know?
Yeah,
is. It
it
is.
is a
It
racket.
absolutely
The
is.
trashification. Listen, when you were talking about how trucks are built for a specific purpose and trucks were built to accomplish a job, I would argue that the things being built today, the trucks being sold today, are being created for a specific purpose and a specific job. The question is, what is that specific job? And in my mind, it constantly reminds me of, guys know Pixar's Wall-E, right? How everybody's like tooling around and their freaking seats and everything literally gets fed to them. They're
Yeah,
these fat gelatinous blobs of nothing with no ambition, no nothing, just hanging around. That's what it's being designed for. It's on another conversation I was in with the East meets West guys. We were joking about how we live in a DoorDash culture.
hmm
Everything is just I get food on DoorDash. I get my medicine on DoorDash. I get my political activism on DoorDash. Like everything just, if it doesn't work, people lose their minds. They don't know what to do.
Right.
And with what we're talking about here, it's like it's a Candy Crush culture.
hmm
Monkey laugh at bright lights. Monkey laugh at sounds. Monkey laugh at boop 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 boop. I mean, we're toddlers learning colors and sounds for the first time and slapping some plastic machine that our parents threw in front of us. That's what these trucks seem like to me now. Oh, all these doodads and this and that, and I'm just like, where's the fucking clutch? Like, give me a break, right?
Right. And not only that, but
Not a machine.
they're expensive too. Like
yeah.
my
Oh
wife was
yeah.
so I said my wife took in our car to get the brakes changed today, and the she was at the dealership, and there was a white Toyota Tacoma, and it looked awesome. I mean, I have to say I like the way the Tacomas look, but it was like 60 grand. I mean, like, this is a truck. Why is it 60 grand?
Yeah,
Who
You
it's
can
know,
because
afford that?
it's got Bose surround sound and an entertainment system and GPS navigation and leathers. Well, I mean, I do like leather seats. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, it doesn't need that. That's not what a truck is for. You're not supposed to sit there and be like, you know what? I don't feel like getting out of my truck today. I feel like I'm just going to sit here at the job site and watch everyone work. No, that's not what it's there for. You don't get four wheel drive as a what is it? The status statement. Four wheel drive is there because you are
because you
supposed to be
need
taking it
to.
off road.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And
This
I,
reminds this reminds me of an article I read a while back. It was talking about Hummers. You know Hummers, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what's more decadent than buying a literal military vehicle as like your getting around town thing? But the
right,
Hummer
but that
H2s,
was fake as
everybody's
fuck.
oh yeah, everybody's making fun of them. But there was this club. The article was about this club of Hummer H2 owners who would like take their shit off road and like legitimately beat the ever living bejesus out of their Hummers. And it was like, oh, well, at least there's like somebody who's doing it right. You know what I mean? Like it
Right.
was
Yeah.
dead
But
ass
I mean,
off-road club, which is hilarious. But at the same time, that's just more decadent bullshit because how can you waste? I mean, think of the thousands of dollars that went into fixing that shit.
You're
You know what
getting
I mean?
2.5 inches per gallon
Yeah,
when you're
right.
driving one of those.
Yeah,
I mean, like the whole Humvee thing, man. I fucking hate Humvees. But then again, I spent a lot of time in the military,
yeah,
and
right.
I actually I have a Humvee driving license. I don't know why they had me learn how to drive a Humvee one day, and there's kind of a funny story. So I was a medic, right? I was a corpsman for the Marines, right? And they're like, "Oh, we need somebody to, just in case you have to drive in case of an emergency." I'm like, "Fuck it, I'll get my goddamn Humvee driving license." And part of the Humvee driver's license back in California in Camp Pendleton is you have to do a night drive with night vision with NVGs on.
Oh yeah.
And I get there and they're like, "Hey doc, you ready for the night drive?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I guess. Sure. Why the fuck not, right?" And they're like, "Did you bring your NVGs?" I'm like, "No. Nobody told me I had to bring my night vision stuff. I thought you guys had it." They're like, "Oh, well, we don't have any extra ones. So you're gonna drive and I'll hold the NVGs and I'll tell you where you turn." So I did an off-road driving test, completely blacked out in a convoy without being able to see anything because my aid driver, the instructor that was teaching me, had the only pair of NVGs. And he's like, "All right, turn left now, just a little bit. All right, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right." So I'm driving off-road in a Humvee through Camp Pendleton without being able to see jack shit. And I was not very good at driving the Humvee because I'm not a big car guy. Like at that time, I was driving a Mini Cooper, so I'm like, that's a big size difference.
Yeah, right.
And somehow I didn't kill everybody or myself within. I got my Humvee driver's license, which I never once put to any use because when they deployed to Afghanistan, they did not take Humvees with them because they're death traps. They took the updated MRAPs and the MATV type things, which were more IED resistant. But yeah, that was a waste of time, and that was the only time I drove a Humvee, and I don't like them, and you can't park them anywhere because they're too wide.
At least on the bright side, if ever in an emergency you've been blinded and the only way to get to the hospital is with a Humvee, someone could tell you what to
Right.
do and you could successfully drive yourself there.
That's like a highly specific post-apocalyptic
Fantasy, yeah.
situation there.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, does anyone have a Humvee license?
Does
Yeah.
anybody have a blind Humvee driver? My time
I
to
think I still
shine.
have, I still think I have my actual like little paper license somewhere in
Nice.
one of my boxes of random shit. But
You
anyways,
should dig
man,
that out and flex on everybody
yeah,
on
I know. I'm
Substack.
I'm a certified Humvee driver from 2008.
Hey, want to see what your mom did last night? Boom, right here.
But yeah, I mean, so I think the greater topic that we're talking about is just the overall kind of a cultural decline of just everything. And I mean, you see it in movies, and I mean, just it's kind of a weird thing. Like, I, I take my daughter to the movies out here, and there's a movie theater, and it's not a bad movie theater, but it doesn't compare to the movie theaters of my childhood that felt like just these epic places where you'd go, with all your
Yeah.
friends and like remember there was like stairs and balconies and these huge screens. And now everything seems kind of dirty and worn down, Like I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Like it feels like ratty bowling alleys and shit like that. And even I know we're gonna segue into this conversation, but even our airplanes are garbage now.
Yep.
And most of all, the thing that kind of like surprises me is how bad our space program is. Because if you've been following the news, you've noticed that we have two astronauts stuck on the International Space Station. Like stuck, like we can't bring them home. And when it comes to quality, NASA and our space program is really the United States' greatest achievement of the 20th century. Some would say, and I think Fisto, you'd probably agree, right?
Don't even start with me on this. I will burn. I will
Right.
burn cities.
So what happened? You know, why is it that, you know, on one hand, we're talking shit about the Russians like running out of gas and stuff in Ukraine, but then we're hitching rides to the space station from them because we don't have shuttles or rockets or. And then when we do have the little Boeing thing that just recently went up there, it gets stuck to the thing and they can't come down. And we are, it's kind of embarrassing, and it's kind of a symbolic, you know, if this isn't a symbolic kind of like, element of the overall state of decline, I don't know what it is, man. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
we used to be able to be like, at least we got NASA, first country on the moon, and now it's like, oh yeah, but our shit's stuck up there, and we're gonna have to rely on some weird like South African dude's company to maybe bring those guys down in a year.
Yeah,
What the
it's
fuck?
so the funny thing about Boeing is like they've had the shittiest year ever with like the first, I think, what is it, the Alaska Airlines door like blowing, but no, it wasn't even a door, it was a door plug. The door plug blowing out on a flight and like traumatizing everybody on board. It's a good thing that it didn't actually like rip the plane apart or anything like that. But then you had the Boeing whistleblower that was testifying in Charleston where they build the Dreamliners get, well, I don't know if it's a good thing that we live in a time where the conspiracy theory that this guy was knocked off by Boeing or by someone in Boeing can gain traction, because I feel like that's another symptom of a larger problem. I mean, you can argue whether he was or was not, but the official story, as we know, is that he took his own life while he was in the middle of testifying against Boeing. That happened. Then a few weeks later, another whistleblower died from some kind of, I think he had contracted an infection, like it was MRSA or something like that. He ended up dead. And then Starliner got postponed multiple times because of issues. Then they finally launched it. Now it's stuck up there because of helium leaks and other problems. Everyone's like, oh, they'll be back in a week. They'll be back in 2 weeks. It's now been like what? They launched in June. And this kind of ties into what we were talking about a little bit ago about trucks and quality, overall quality, about stuff that that used to be American made and produced, and there used to be a marked standard of quality. Boeing, I mean, the 747 is like a legend in aviation, especially in commercial aviation. They call it the queen of the skies. And nowadays you've got planes being grounded left and right. Like I think less than a day ago they were talking about how the Dreamliner test fleet got grounded because of I think it was issues with the engine mounts or something like that. And that's their flagship aircraft now. The Dreamliner is their flagship aircraft, and you've got people coming out saying that this is what's going on. And what it seems to indicate to me is that Boeing as a company has this internal issue of cutting corners to make sure they make a good profit on things, but also deliver things on time. And so what we've seen is it's paid, or we're paying for it now with how the aircraft are being dealt with, but we also see it in Starliner. And I think there was, let me see here. I think Phistos, I showed this to you the other day. It was on Flying
Yeah.
Magazine that there was a NASA investigation that found that Boeing is hindering Americans' return to the moon because the SLS, which is supposed to be taking, which I think there was a video now a few years back where NASA said we were going to be back on the moon by 2024, and here we are. We're still not there. And there seems to be an indication that Boeing's, not, I wouldn't say negligence, let's call it negligence, or gross incompetence,
Yeah,
is
call it that.
actively hindering our ability to return to the moon because things are going, there's an unqualified workforce. The quality checks aren't there. Issues are arising with the actual thing. And of course, Starliner is kind of like the icing on the cake here, because it's like, okay, well, this is, Boeing used to be like top dog, they, and it just blows my mind that nowadays we're looking at like our return to space, and the Starliner capsule is just sitting up there at the International Space Station with two astronauts just sitting there, twiddling their thumbs. Well, maybe not twiddling their thumbs, but waiting to come home on a piece of hardware that might not even survive the trip. I mean, they actively said that there's something like they're worried about it if they disconnect it from the station that it might lose control and like crash into it.
That's
Which
terrifying.
yeah, and
Take
it's
take out the International Space Station.
well, I mean, they're
How
talking
funny would
about
that be?
yeah, they're talking about like deorbiting the space station in 2030 or something like that. Which I'm like, that not the way you want to do it, and a little bit ahead of schedule. But then again, that would be the first time that Boeing has produced something in a while that is ahead of schedule. So, um, but
Ugh.
it's pathetic because it's like what was it? We were talking you and me, Fisto. We were talking a few days ago about Gene Kranz and the Kranz dictum after Apollo 1.
Yes, yes. I love that you're bringing this up. Perfect,
Yeah,
perfect segue.
like tough and competent. Those were the two things that he wanted Mission Control to be, and everybody associated with the program at that point, because they couldn't afford to make mistakes. They just kind of hoped that things would work out and that things would get better, that they'd be where they needed to be by the end of all of it. And what ended up happening was you had, what was it, three astronauts burned to death.
Yeah.
And
For the folks at home who aren't familiar, Apollo 1, look up Apollo 1. There was a test on the landing pad, and because of the pure oxygen environment in the space capsule, there was a fire, and the three astronauts inside the capsule burned to death. The Kranz dictum is a speech that the mission commander Kranz gave to NASA, the mission control at NASA the next day, where he basically rolls in and cock slaps everybody with it. And he basically says, I don't care what the committee's going to find as far as whose fault it is. I know it's us. So here's what's going to change right fucking now. And he talks about, doesn't use such colorful metaphor, of course,
Right.
but he lays out tough and competent, and tough being we are accountable for what goes wrong. The buck stops with us. The buck stops with me. Competent is literally you are going to know your job inside and out like the back of your hand, or you don't step the fuck in mission control. Like, again, the colorful metaphor, but you read the Krantz dictum, and this guy goes hard. You can read it in the language how pissed this guy is that this happened. And it's literally just, guys, we fucked up, and that's it. Three guys lost their lives. It's never happening again. And this guy just is like Moses coming down from the mountain with two tablets, right? Like, just even look at me funny, and I'm going to wipe all of you out. You know what I mean? So, yeah,
Right.
sorry. Just a little history lesson there for the folks
Well,
at home.
so it's interesting because when you think about the space program and well, yeah, the space program, it's kind of a cornerstone of 20th century Americana, if you really want to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of the mythology of the United
It's our
States of America.
Coliseum.
It
Mhm.
absolutely
It's the
is.
American Coliseum of Rome.
All right.
100%.
I mean, it is it's a near spiritual kind of concept. And I mean, even come on, you look at MTV, their original logo was the Apollo astronaut in space, and so much of the science fiction that came out of the United States and the very hopeful, very positive, like forward-looking science fiction came out of that whole era, from Star Trek to a lot of that stuff. And there's a weird and kind of terrifying like decline in that program, and I think it probably started in the 21st century or even before that with the space shuttle itself. But even that, it was a very iconic thing. And I remember having toys of the space shuttle when I was a little kid. I remember going to the Aerospace Museum and seeing all the NASA capsules and that kind of stuff. And I mean, do they do anything anymore? What does NASA do? You know? And there was a time where
like yeah,
I think there was a time where as a people we really believed that every day would be something new, something better, something, more forward thinking, forward moving. And that any day now we're going to land on, Mars and we're going to do that. And I just don't even believe we're going to make it there in our lifetime at this pace, right? And sure as hell not going to find, interesting new life or things outside of our solar system because I feel like if we're going to do it, it's not going to be NASA because it seems like it's become an
Probably
incompetent
not.
organization. So the question is why? What's going on with the decline? And not just our aerospace programs, but just a general decline as a whole. What's the cause of that?
Mm. I think it's a lot of different things. I don't think it's just one. I mean, I don't think we can point to like one sole issue or problem that explains all of it. I think all of it are symptoms of a larger. I don't know. It's almost like we've gotten too comfortable with the kinds of lives that we lead. Like even, I mean, there was a time when you didn't have everybody's thoughts and opinions on every little thing. And this is probably the biggest reason why I don't really engage with social media as often as I used to back when I was younger, and why I try to. You can ask Fisto. I'm not hugely active on Substack, even though I do occasionally write on there.
I
And I do.
post your memes on occasion, but that's
Uh,
that's pretty
well,
much it.
that's how I exclusively communicate with you anymore. Is
Yes.
it's through memes.
That's the
But
only way anybody talks to Fisto, though. I mean, just through memes.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I'm also happy to be Isaiah's I'm also happy to be Isaiah's personal Moses.
yeah,
I simply
he's
deliver messages from the
yeah.
Most High.
But that's it's this larger sense of, I think we're just saturated with stuff and information that we can't really make sense of anymore, and so we're looking for ways to streamline things. We're looking for to take all that personality because there's so much. I mean, if you look at all the information, all the ways that you can interpret certain things, and how many opinions are out there, how many variations on things there are. Everyone's looking for something to be streamlined and tamped down, or you know digestible, which I really hate using that as the turn of phrase here, but like it's like what Fisto said at the beginning when he was talking about the mush that Neo was being fed before he got disconnected. Everyone wants things to be digestible. They want it to be simple. They want it to be easy to understand. You look at like, I'll use spaceflight as an example. I think I heard someone say sometime that it was like a conspiracy theorist or something like that said that the moon landing couldn't have happened because it didn't have the technology, and it's like somebody replied, "Yeah, but that didn't stop them. They didn't have the technology, but that didn't stop them. They were using stuff that our phones, even the most basic like Nokia phone from like the 2000s, had more computational power than what they had in the lunar lander. That didn't
Right.
stop them. It was because part of it was what they could do with the technology, and the rest of it was human ingenuity and skill. And
Right. Yeah.
it
Give the
it,
humans the tool.
it required the human mind to make sense of it and to do it and to effectively do it. Now everything is automated. Everything is driven by AI. Everything is being, and it's not even really AI. It's algorithms. It's predictive stuff. It's not even things that are thinking for themselves yet. I mean, that might happen at some point, but then what is that going to happen? What's going to happen when that eventually does occur? When AI is capable of finishing your thoughts for you if you wanted to,
Uh,
or
We're just going to become slaves to the tool, basically, is what we'll be.
yeah, instead of the other way around,
Right.
which is the difference between you know being able to fly a space shuttle versus the space shuttle flying you to wherever you're wanting to go. And it just becomes like, I think that's probably has a lot to do with it, because it isn't so much the human being doing what, bringing out the best in something. It's the tool catering to the human being as a and I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that there's a philosophy, a design philosophy in particular, but also like an overall philosophy in our daily lives, where we're not the ones driving things; things are driving us. And
Right.
so I think that's probably got a big reason why there's a lack of quality overall, because it's no longer about us making the most out of what we can use. It's you know I'm at a loss for words at this point, because I tend to ramble and
But
kind of
no,
use stream of
you're
consciousness. But
right. So
Yeah.
in my okay, in my industry, right? I work in healthcare, and we do coding, patient notes and that kind of stuff, right? And modern healthcare, everything is done on a electronic record, and they're always constantly getting updated. And in the past 17 years, um, basically every healthcare agency in the country has switched to electronic health records and everything's charted and coded. But if you talk to any doctor, nurse, radiologist, anything like that, they don't work they don't use that as a tool. They work for that tool, where the way you do patient care is basically now tailored around these electronic tools because you have to chart so many hours for the insurance company and you have to chart so many encountered notes and blah blah blah. And you get to the point where you're no longer working, you're not, you're not using the health record as a tool, which is that's what it was supposed to be originally, right? Like a knowledge tool. Now you're basically working for this electronic system, and you've become kind of like the way you do everything is like, I remember a while ago there was a power outage and the system dropped, and I ordered some medication for somebody, and the pharmacy's like, "Oh, sorry, our computer's down." And I'm like, "Well, just I'll write the prescription, right, by hand, right, old-fashioned way, sign it, right?"
Yeah, right.
And they're like, "Oh no, we can't take it because we can't input it into the system, even if it's written by hand." So I mean, you're telling me that now you're incapable of doing the thing that's been done for the last 200 years of pharmacies, which is, handwritten prescriptions, right? Because you are a servant of a computer system that is now failed. So basically, like, you could not give medication to somebody that needed antibiotics because your computer that counts the pills doesn't work, and you are incapable of
Oh
opening
boy.
the jar, counting out 20, and writing it down. And they've been doing this, since the history of, pharmaceuticals,
Forever.
right? You know?
Yeah.
So in a way, we've become slaves to the computer systems in a roundabout way. And I mean, you mentioned Isaiah, you mentioned GPS, right? I mean, come on,
Yep.
look how GPS has made everybody extra retarded, where they don't know how to
Yep.
get places, including myself. I'm not going to take myself out of it. Like, I've become a little bit too reliant on GPS. When I first started driving, and I remember I used to like carry the little map book in my car, and I used to remember I had all the freeways of Los Angeles memorized, and I could get from Pasadena to Orange County real quick. Now I couldn't do it if I, I mean, South Carolina has like one highway, and I still don't know where anything
Yeah.
is. You know what I mean? I go
Yeah.
Yeah.
north for Charleston, south for Savannah. That's all I know. Everything else is a freaking GPS, right? But I mean, when's the last time anybody memorized a phone number?
Uh,
I can remember mine. Does that
shit, dude.
count?
I still remember the house phone number from the house I
Yeah.
grew up in.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
me too.
Me too,
Yeah.
right?
You
But I'm
remember your
for
current cell phone and you remember the house you grew up in,
right.
Exactly.
I'm
if you're old
41.
enough
I
for that.
think I think I, if I were to really focus and just use like touch, I'd probably remember like a high school girlfriend's phone number and my friend's
Hmm.
phone number. But for the
Yeah.
most part, like, I mean, I barely remember my own phone number half the time. People ask me like at the store, like, put your phone number. I'm like, fuck, is that mine or my wife's? I don't. And we've become completely dependent on these tools. And once you become dependent on the tool, you start serving the tool. You start doing
Yep.
things to make life easier for the tool in a way. And I don't think that's a good thing. And I don't think that, we look at stuff like the, chat GTP AI stuff, and you have teachers writing, you know, lesson plans using chat
Oh my
GTP, and
God.
then
Yeah. Hey.
students are using chat GTP to do the lessons. And what the fuck's the point of even going to school at that point?
Yeah.
But what's funny
Having
is,
just, sorry, real quick, just
yeah,
having gone back to school, I'm now in my second week back with students. And yeah, just that, hey guys, what you do before Google? You know, just not know stuff. I'm trying to get the kids right off the bat, the first few weeks, right off the bat, I try to encourage them just to give me their thoughts, give me their opinions. I'm not interested in answers, right? Don't tell me about what political geography is for. Don't tell me, what a population pyramid is. Don't defend it. Or I mean, don't define it. I don't care. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me what your opinion is. Tell me what your thought is, because I'm trying to get them to immediately begin, stepping out. Hey, I don't know. We'll think it through. Let me ask you a couple questions. Let's give it a go. Just tell me what you think. There's no right answer. I just want to have the discussion. I don't care about what we come up with. We can confirm the correct answer later. I just want you to try to discuss things. It's always interesting to me, like who's able to do it, who isn't able to do it, and then, try to think why. But this is another example of just how deep shit we're in a lot of ways. And to go back to, hey, why is it like this? The two things I keep thinking about is I keep thinking about what I've been reading in Reinhold Niebuhr, um, Moral Man and Immoral Society. And it's that tension between individuals who can strive and be moral and these huge systems, these huge societies that are ultimately at the end of the day based on force, based on a balance of force.
Right.
And they're simply unstable. Human societies are just unstable, period. And that has to do with the nature of man, especially when you try to scale and you try to make it large and you try to get it cooperative. Things just, they have to be renewed. They have to be rejuvenated. They have to be redone. And then that makes me think of, a lot of the famous Roman emperors, guys like Augustus or Caesar or Trajan, Marcus Aurelius. Then you get into the Byzantine emperors like Justinian, before him, Diocletian, Basil II. These are people where they did not serve the system served them, and they and the guys with them, the guys and gals with them, they're on whatever you want to call it, they drove forward to what their goals were. Think about it like this, guys. Let me produce a thought experiment here. With the Krantz dictum, we know what their NASA reaction to Apollo 1 was. That's never happening again. We're going to fix it, and we're going to do this right, or we're not going to do it at all. Look at what happened with Apollo 13. Everybody knows the story with the famous movie. Holy crap, they got those guys home.
Right.
Right? Incredible. I mean, that shows you how far they came from Apollo 1 to Apollo 13.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's think about the current Boeing thing. What would be worst case scenario for the current Boeing thing with the International Space Station?
Uh, I can think of maybe they
Maybe two.
disconnect with the two. Yeah, they disconnect with the two astronauts in the capsule. The capsule loses control, crashes into the International Space Station. Everybody dies. The International Space Station burns up the atmosphere, lands on the ground, and poisons the wherever it lands. Let's say it lands on land for some unknown reason in a populated area. That place is fucked. That would probably be the worst case scenario. Also, the debris produced by it spins out of control and launches into runaway Kessler syndrome, and all of our satellites fall out of the sky because space debris tends to multiply exponentially from that point forward.
Right.
Right. So, what would be our society? What would be our culture's reaction to that?
Uh-oh.
Compare it. Would it be anything? But I mean, seriously though, would it be anything like the Krantz dictum? Let's pull it back a
No.
little bit. Maybe the two astronauts get off the space station, but they don't make it back to Earth. They die. Think about what happened with like Discovery, or what was it, Columbia. Think
Columbia.
about what happened with Columbia. I mean, does anybody even remember that thing freaking burned up and they all crashed into the
Yeah.
desert?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Anybody even give a
remember.
fuck
I mean,
that that
I, I
happened?
I remember I was like,
I mean, we do, yeah, naturally, but the general
yeah.
populace, do people even know that happened?
No,
Right.
I
And
don't
that
think
was the end of the space
Yeah, that
shuttle
was the end of the
program.
space shuttle. That was the
yeah,
end of the
that
space
was
shuttle program.
that marked the well, I mean, the space shuttle continued to launch for a few more years after that, but that was basically the nail in the coffin, for a
The
lack of
death
better
knell.
terms,
Yeah, yeah,
for the
yeah. The death
space
call.
shuttle program.
And even the space shuttle program itself, if you look into that, it was a bureaucratic nightmare of compromises and all kinds of stuff to create that beast of a machine. Like
I
that
mean,
wasn't
you
really good. It was okay, but like it wasn't really good at one thing. Like
I,
not like the Apollo
yeah,
stuff was.
but I mean, look at Challenger. Look at what happened to the
Yeah.
guy that was warning, "Hey, this shit shouldn't be flying," because what was it, the O rings or whatever. I can't hang on. Who was that guy? Um, Let me look.
Don't look it up. Just use your memory. Don't look it up. Be wrong.
I'm sorry,
Be
I
afraid to
couldn't
be
remember his
wrong.
name. I couldn't
That's
remember his
okay. I'm
name
just
because
teasing.
his last name was like Boys Julie or something like that. I like, how am
I
I
mean,
going to remember
I
that?
know what
That's
you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
that is a hard name. But like, he warned NASA that, hey, this thing is going to, if you launch it, there's going to be a disaster. And sure enough, and NASA like literally tried to steamroll. I think they blackballed him as a result of what he was doing because they didn't want to hear it. And it's
Yeah,
complete and total opposite of the
complete.
Cransticum.
Yep. It makes me
Right.
think that, there'd probably be a lot of spicy takes on the internet, and we'd probably see some kind of like repeat of the Titanic sub meme. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
we
Like
would.
something like that. Um, Trump would probably release some, thoughts and prayers to our brave American astronauts or whatever, and then Harris would blame Trump somehow. Like somehow it's his fault.
Right.
Yeah.
It either get
Or the
politicized,
Russians. Or the Russians.
it get either politicized or completely forgotten.
Right, but does anybody legitimately believe that for a moment
I don't
it
think it
would
would be
pause and
politicized.
fix what caused it, or
No.
I
even
don't.
bother to figure out what went wrong?
Yeah, I don't even think it would be politicized because I don't think that there's so many people out there that are so interested in space. As I mean, you look at how people say
Unless
what
you
you
could
want
blame the
about.
Russians. Unless you could
Yeah,
blame the
unless
Russians.
you can blame the Russians, they won't give a shit
Putin killed him. Putin killed him.
because space doesn't now. I probably with present company excluded and whoever's listening, space probably doesn't excite the general public the way that it used to because it's just a thing that we do now. It's common to them, but even when we're up in space, it's not even really like we're doing a whole lot. We're just kind of, I mean, that's not to say that we're not doing important experiments on the International Space Station, but at the same time, it's like everything is routine. Like you remember when SpaceX started launching, Starship and how getting it to land after launch was the big deal.
Yeah.
Now everyone just kind of shrugs their shoulders, which, I guess maybe that's a good thing because it's becoming more acceptable to think that, one day everyone could go on that. And that's just how we do things. But
That's like how people shrug when they get on an airplane, unless it's a
right,
bone.
like you,
Just kidding.
well, yeah, you might get sucked out, or hey, here's a joke for you. What sound does a 747 make when it hits the ground?
I don't know.
Going.
Boing.
Dad joke love right there.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
oh,
You
that's a
know,
good one. What
uh,
sound is it? Boing.
so I've done a lot of air travel. Okay, I've flown across the Pacific numerous times, and I've flown across the Atlantic numerous times, and I've spent some time on some flights. Like I think I did a 18-hour flight from Singapore one time, and
Ooh.
that was a
Oh,
beast,
Ooh.
Uh, and I still find it amazing every single time. The idea that like I mean, I grew up, my half my family was aerospace engineers, and they worked for airlines in Europe, and they still do. And I remember being a little kid and my grandpa taking me to the airport and showing me the cockpit, and he was like one of the lead engineers for the Romanian airline, and you know, getting to like sit in the cockpit with the pilots, and I had wings, and I remember I had a Lufthansa wing because I flew around in a Lufthansa plane back in the day, and I still find it amazing that it's like one of the peaks of human ingenuity that we can take this tube, made of steel and plastic and fiberglass and whatever it's made out of, and we can shoot it through space, through space, air, and it flies. It's something that would be unbelievable to everybody in human history for the last, for known human history up until, the mid 20th century.
Right. Worst part is you might get like a dude sitting next to you that hogs the armrest and maybe
Right.
snores a little bit. But even then, it's like I only have to deal with this guy for a few
I
hours.
mean, it's an amazing feat of human ingenuity. And not only that, but it has really democratized the world for good and for bad. The idea of, cheap travel. You think about, a flight from New York to Los Angeles takes a few hours, and it's relatively affordable for most people. Most people can save up some money and take a JetBlue flight, or one of the economy lines, and it can be done, right? It might not be pleasant, but it can be done, right? And any other time in American history, that would have been a trip, you know? It's
That's
a
just
hell of a
summer.
it's a hell of a trip driving, and I did the
Yeah.
drive from California to South Carolina, but I mean, pre-automobile, pre-airplane, man, like, you know,
Pre-railroad.
yeah.
Pre-railroad, man. Remember?
right,
Pre-railroad.
right, and those are all
Holy
new,
smokes.
and there was an
Yeah.
idea, and I mean, just last year, I flew to Europe, and how amazing is that? A trip that used to take, lifetime. It was a lifetime trip. I did in a few hours. from Los Angeles all the way, from I'm from South Carolina. From I flew out of Savannah, and then I went to Eastern Europe, and I was there in a few hours, and I hung out with my cousins who flew from all over the world also, and we all hung out. And then I hopped back in the plane and I flew back to Savannah. Actually, I flew back to Charleston, which I think the Savannah airport's better than Charleston. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, it's Charleston's whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, like that's an amazing feat that we do. We took take for granted. We've demystified the car and we demystified the airplane, and really maybe that's the key. That's the problem, that we have desacralized everything, that everything
Y-
takes has no meaning anymore.
You know, it reminds me the single greatest science fiction film of all time, I
Total
will
Recall.
say, is no,
Independence Day.
no. They're both great, but it's 2001 Space Odyssey.
Okay, Stanley
We
Kubrick.
ha yes, we have, and not just Stanley Kubrick, but also Arthur C. Clarke. One of my favorite facts about that movie, for people that don't know, is the movie and the book were written and created together with Clarke and Kubrick. The film was Kubrick and Clarke, while the book is Clarke and Kubrick.
Right,
That's
at the
that. That's the
Chelsea,
way that. Yeah,
written at the Chelsea Hotel, by the way.
yeah.
Little
So
trivia.
one of the greatest things about 2001 is the fact that space travel is so demystified. I mean, the dude's literally flying up there to the moon on Pan Am.
Right,
Like, anybody a little older than us has just got a pang of nostalgia. And it's just that whole sequence of where the main guy's flying to the moon. It's so just mundane. It doesn't matter. And I think that that is unavoidable,
right,
simply because that's how humans are. We get used to something and we're good. Railroads, oh, no big deal. Cars, no big deal. Planes, no big deal. Spaceships, whatever. Hyperspace, okay, fine. I'm almost done with Asimov's Foundation, and it's hilarious. Like, traveling across the Milky Way galaxy is shrug. We'll be there in a few hours. It's no big deal. I
right.
think that's unavoidable.
It's
But I
what's
think that
funny. Go
but I
ahead.
think that what gets lost, sorry, one more thought and then I'm done.
Yep.
Um, I think what gets lost, you are right though, that demystification, if humanity does not keep pushing, that's where we fall back and fall backwards into error. And which is one of my favorite parts about that movie is they get to the moon, they find this obelisk, it blows their mind. They find out it's transmitting out to Jupiter, and it's just like, what the fuck? That's the thing. Somebody with humanity has to keep pushing and has to keep finding something that makes us go, what the fuck? And gets at least enough people interested to go look and see what the crazy thing is. You
Right.
know what I mean? Come hell or high water.
I mean, you got to climb
This,
that
this,
mountain.
yeah,
Yeah.
this leads me to conclude that the best humans have to offer have been and will always be the explorers.
Mhm.
Literally guys and gals get on a boat and go. Fuck
Right.
it. I'm gonna
So
die, whatever. I'm gonna die in a cool place far from home.
if I
You know,
So
don't, I
that's
might get rich.
so
yeah, and if it works out, I'm gonna be known forever. So what I'm trying to get at is I think that disillusionment, that disenchantment has to happen, because then when we fall back, I mean, who's going to forget that we went to the moon? Who's going to forget that these technologies exist? Unless there's something catastrophically bad, someone's going to know that humans did cool stuff. And we're going
Right.
to want to get back there. We're going to want to get back to it. You
I
know what I
hope
mean?
so. I mean,
I hope
look,
so. Yeah.
you're a history teacher, and I know Rome has been your thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I know one of the, you know, not a huge like Roman Empire like height, the Golden Age Empire era. What I really like, that the era of the Roman Empire like is the end, the transition into what you would say the Dark Age or the Middle Ages, right?
Hmm.
Where everything kind of fell to shit, everything kind of was forgotten. And I love the idea that you had these people living, basically tearing down these monuments and these architectural marvels at the time, and these aqueducts. They had no fucking idea how to build them or what to do with them or any of that stuff. And these guys were, reverted to like a peasant kind of mindset. And I always feel like, are we going to reach that era again? Have we peaked in a way? And are we going to get to a point where we're going to be like, well, I don't know how this light switch works anymore. And it used to have light, but now we don't have it anymore, you know?
I
Because
think
nobody
I
knows how
think
to build it anymore.
I think the key, and with the Roman, and I might be mythologizing this a little bit, and if so, I really don't care. With Rome, I think the thing with Rome is that yes, the Western Empire falls, the Eastern Empire eventually falls, and it's generally considered a time of shit, as you said. Innovation still occurs, things still happen.
Right.
The Byzantine Empire, preserves an enormous amount of knowledge. The Islamic empires preserve and continue a vast amount of knowledge. And eventually, a lot of that gets back west thanks to your favorite city state, Venice. One of my favorite stories ever is just about the refugees that fled to Venice after Constantinople fell. And they were able to help people better understand what the hell was going on with business, Byzantium, and Romans, or Roman knowledge and all this stuff. And I think the key, and I guess we could have a philosophical discussion about it, but as long as humans remain curious, it isn't so much that will we remember how to do it, is can we redo the work?
Right.
I think about like what Einstein said, brains are for thinking, not remembering. It really, in the long term, doesn't matter if we remember, as long as we remain able to think, be curious, question. We'll just figure it out again. We have to, because reality is reality, right, guys? There's only really one way to fly. Like flight, there are mechanics and there are laws of nature that dictate how a plane goes up and goes down without killing everybody, right? We agree?
Right.
Mhm.
So there's only
Yeah.
one path back to that, and
So
we'll find it. We have to.
so you guys know, well, Fisto, I know you know, but I love The Expanse. I love the book
Yes.
series. I love the show. There is a passage that I remember. I forget which book it's from, but it was talking about who was the was it the Protestant pastor Anna? I think
Yeah.
I actually got
An-
the yeah. I've got the
Anna
passage.
Volavidov.
Yeah, it says if humanity were capable of being satisfied, then they'd still be living in trees and eating bugs out of one another's fur. Anna had walked on a moon of Jupiter. She looked up through a dome-covered sky at the great red spot, close enough to see the swirls and eddies of a storm larger than her homeworld. She tasted water thawed from ice as old as the solar system itself. And it was that human dissatisfaction, that human audacity that had put her there. And part of me thinks that pretty much encapsulates everything we're talking about is that we're just not, we're so, as a species, we just don't like the way things are, period. Like we
Oh
want
yeah.
things to keep, we keep wanting to move forward. We keep wanting to achieve more. We keep wanting to do more. And I think right now we're at a time and place in our history where we're in danger of being satisfied with having all of our shit taken care of for us, not having to think about things. We're getting comfortable. And I think that for better or worse, there is going to be people, explorers, scientists, engineers, thinkers, poets, even that are going to see, maybe they're all having the same kind of conversations we're having like right now, where
I can almost guarantee it.
Right.
There are
we're
lots of people having conversations just like ours.
we're looking around and we're
100%.
dissatisfied with how comfortable things are, how everything's being taken care of for us, and how we're not having to think about things. We're not having to use our brains, and it is so. It is the antithesis of human nature to not want to think, to not be curious. I would actually say that anyone who isn't curious is an anomaly because how can you not be? Like where I work out at the executive airport in Charleston, and when I work night shift, I work mid shifts, but like I used to work night shift. I would work 7 to 7, and things get quiet around midnight, 1 a.m., whatever, and I'd just go outside and I'd spend about an hour just looking up. Of course, I'd have my phone in case somebody needed to reach me or something like that, in case there's a flight or something that needed paperwork or whatever. And can you imagine what it's like to just sit there and be like, 50,000 years ago in Africa or whatever, looking up and just wondering what the hell all those bright things were, and just thinking about what are they gods? Are they, whatever? And it helps to kind of go back to that mindset of not really understanding things because it makes you ask questions.
Right.
and that's the real thing, is that we if we stop asking questions, if we stop trying to think about, what if or what's next or whatever, then we stop really kind of, I guess, feeding into our human nature. And I
Right.
think that it just becomes, if we lose that intellectual curiosity and that desire to find out the answer to things that maybe we will never get the answers to, like you said, like you said, Alex, is you have to climb that mountain. It is instinctual in us to climb that mountain, to try and reach the next step, to go to the moon, to go to Mars, to go outside the solar
Yeah.
system. I mean,
The universe looks at humanity and says, "Fuck around and find out." And humans go, "Your terms are acceptable."
But
exactly.
here's
Just
actually I want to kind of throw in a caveat, right? I want to ask you guys this question, and this is, oh my God, this is going to turn into, I have a feeling it's going to turn into a shitstorm if anybody listens to this.
should I just say "fuck you" ahead of time?
All right, just okay. So you
Nah,
say
let's hear it.
us, right? You say us, but historically speaking, the explorers and the adventurers were always, Westerners, Europeans, right? I mean, you look at the Chinese, and they had a advanced civilization for thousands of years, and they did not have the exploration drive. They didn't go. They built a navy and they tore it down and they closed up. They became comfortable very fast and they never explored. They never crossed the Pacific, right? Uh, the same thing with the Japanese. They had a complex culture that closed itself down. You look at the Indian populations of the Indian subcontinent also didn't really go anywhere. All these great cultures, I mean, the Aztecs and the Incas and high advanced cultures that never had the drive. It took a bunch of dirty, flea-bitten Portuguese on some like ratty ass boats to go west across the Atlantic. And it was the same people that eventually landed on the moon. And so is it a trait of like Western civilization? This drive, this desire to question, because it doesn't seem like it's a very universal human trait. If you look at all the other cultures, it tends to be a thing that's very much so, um, you know, a Western civilization concept. What do you guys
it's
think about
also
that?
kind of a
I think
we.
to illustrate.
It,
Sorry, let me
yeah,
go
go
first
ahead.
because I want to provide. I want to muddy the historical context a little bit.
Yep.
Alexander, that's actually a really excellent point. And I think at least the first thought I had, or the first thing I would say, is when it comes to the American cultures, the Aztecs, the Inca, the Maya. Well, how'd they get there in the first place?
Right. That's a good point,
So,
actually.
so those cultures, and I think that those cultures got their ass handed to them so badly after the Columbian Exchange because they had spent all of that time just getting established in the Americas to begin with. They were starting to go up that cultural, they were starting to go up that civilization ladder. They just got started way later than everybody else.
All
That was
right.
their fundamental flaw that honestly they can't really do anything about it. It is what it is. But I think, they got there in the first place. I suspect that the Chinese and the Japanese learned very expensive lessons when the Westerners showed up.
Oh, they
I
did.
mean, look at
The
what happened to
Meiji
China.
Restoration is all about that,
Oh,
basically.
dude, the Japanese are freaking goated, right? Like Perry pops up and they're like, okay, all right, guys, we better figure this out like right now. You know what I mean? And the Japanese Empire, horribly brutal militaristic empire, but by God, they went hard, right?
All right.
But they've learned some very expensive lessons. And I would also agree with the Chinese. I think that's why you see such a robust and almost militant Chinese Communist Party, Chinese government now, because they're like, we remember what you guys did to us. So they now understand the danger of remaining insular. They
Right.
they they, they can't just sit there on defense. So that's a lesson brought to them by Western civilization. You're fucking welcome. You know what I mean?
Right. And,
Um,
and you know what? I mean, to quickly interject, historically
yeah, yeah, yeah,
speaking,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think the big slap to the Chinese really was, the Opium Wars,
Yeah.
and
Oh
they
yeah.
became a completely decadent
Oh yeah.
society where they
Yeah.
became reliant on, British trade and European trade so they can get high, basically,
Yeah.
and it wrecked them. And it
I
complete,
think I think we will look back on that in 1,000 years and we will agree that the British made a huge mistake when they did that to the Chinese because the Chinese have such long fucking memories.
I'm
Just look
sure
at
they're still
TikTok.
seething
Just look
from
at TikTok. Oh,
right.
they yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's their opium in return.
Digital opium. Yep, exactly. So there's all of that, but I do believe that you make an excellent point. I mean, the Portuguese were staring out across the Atlantic Ocean, right?
Right.
I mean, for how long? And they're just going, man, what's out there? What's out there? I mean, they gotta wonder. It must have drove them mad, obviously, because the first ships that could do it, they hopped on and off they went. You know what I mean? And
Right.
then Spanish and so on and so forth. We all know the story. So I agree that there's something very specific to Western culture. And then once they land in America, I mean, gosh, Americans, we're insane. Go west, go west, go. We just go, go, go. So of course we went up at the first opportunity because we were just obsessed with exploration, expansion. We have this huge continent to play in. You know what I mean?
Right. I always like, when driving across the United States, I'm
Oh, the
always
greatest
like,
thing.
I always think like, man, I can just imagine those guys going west in these covered wagons, and
Oh yeah, one-way
some of
trip,
them
baby.
some of them make it to Arizona and they just give up. You're like, why would you stop in Arizona, dude?
Yeah,
Just come on, cross the line, go. You stop before the finish line, okay?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Go over the mountains and you're in California. It's awesome,
And
but
it's amazing. Yeah, it's paradise.
settle in fucking Phoenix, man. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it reminds me a while back. So I was looking through some materials for class, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, but the French writer de Tocqueville, is that how you say it?
Yeah,
He was the guy who
So
wrote
yeah.
American. He
Alexis did Tocqueville or
Alexis de
something like that.
Tocqueville. Yeah, he wrote about Americans and all this. And the passage I'm reading, it's ultimately a criticism of Americans, I think. But he says that we have a restless happiness. And I'm just
Mm,
like, I'm owning that. Yes, absolutely. I'm restlessly
I mean,
happy.
I'm not
I'm happy,
American and
but
I
like
have
I
that.
want more. Yeah, well,
it's something
maybe
that's
that comes
intrinsic to yeah.
maybe that comes from the Roman Empire, brother.
Mm.
Maybe it's the land,
The land. Yeah.
I always think about the land itself. When I lived in Japan, I uh I loved living in Japan, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like I belonged in Japan. And one of the I always had like I'd go to all the shrines and temples, and I would feel a spiritual energy there. I would feel it, but it wasn't mine. It was like the ghosts were wrong. And I talked to a friend of mine, the writer Sky Hernstrom, who's a great science fiction fantasy writer. He spent some time living in Japan too, and him and I were talking one day. He's like, "I love Japan also, but I didn't want to die there." I'm like, "What do you mean, Sky?" And he's like, "I would just feel like my soul would get lost, you know?" And I mean, I know he was being, mythical and hyperbolic in a way, but I fully understood what he meant to where the land was so old and it didn't belong to me, you know?
You kind of just vanish into it.
Right. And you would
Mhm.
get lost, you'd be a foreigner forever for all eternity. And that's kind of terrifying to think. And later on, going to Europe, back to Europe, I felt like I belonged in Europe. I felt, go back to Bucharest, I feel like, okay, this is where I belong, But for some reason, America always feels open, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody's be like, but the Native Americans lived here forever. Shut up, right? They got here too, and it feels like a frontier. Like it feels like it's like, especially the West. If you go west to like Colorado or
It's
Arizona,
still so wide open. It's
it's
still
so
so wide
like
open.
you'll get lost, but it's like nobody's almost, or you
Right.
can. It's up for the taking in a way. You can still fight it. You can still fight against the elements and still, you know chop up a part in the desert or something like that. And you wouldn't feel like too foreign over there. Maybe that's why the West is so attractive. Uh, the West of the United States. It's hostile, but also open. And I don't feel that here in the South. Like South Carolina, I don't. It doesn't feel like that at all.
No,
It's
it
got a
doesn't.
different vibe. It doesn't feel. It feels
It's
old.
it's old, but it's also established. Like there's you don't get that same sort of, because that's part of the reason why, like, my ultimate plan, if I'm still single by the time I'm 40, is to go and like move to Wyoming or Montana and like
Right.
something like that, because I don't feel like you have feel what it, I think what it is it's where it used to be, pristine marshland and stuff like that, and then we came along and settled it. It feels settled, I think, is the
It
right
does.
word.
It does. It does feel settled.
And out west, in Wyoming, and that's why I say I want to like move to Wyoming or Montana, is because there's still that natural beauty and the way that it might have looked to the frontier, the pioneers, the settlers, the things like that as they're going west. And there's something about it where when you remove all of the human elements from it, there's something about it that kind of makes it feel more. And maybe this isn't true for everybody, because I know there's a bunch of people out there who would be like, I couldn't stand being out there in wide open spaces. It would just freak me out. For me, I love wide open spaces. I love being able to look out and see the horizon, and being able to look all the way around me and either see mountains off in the distance or trees or something like that. I want to be surrounded by something natural, because even though there's that, even though we settle, I think it's also this kind of instinctive urge to want to, uh, I don't know, maybe be part of the environment that you're in,
Right.
to
Not
grow with
separate.
it.
Right. Not separate from the nature around you, but be part of the organism as a whole.
Right. Because like, yeah, you look up, and I mean, I use this as an example when I'm out there at the airport, is looking up at the sky, you feel insignificant, but you're also like struck with this wonder of how, you know magnificent it all is. And I think when we talk about, the idea of human beings kind of settling into this, I mean, because I think that there's this war going on between being satisfied with what you have and being satisfied with having everything taken care of for you, and continuing to push against the elements, and continuing to expand your boundaries and things like that. I think that it's just this instinctive drive for some people that, if you see someplace, you want to go there, you want to experience it, you want to be able to set your own eyes on it, as opposed to just staying in one place.
Right.
And and that's the interesting thing too, is like, you notice that in history you don't really hear a lot about, you know like, I mean, I guess you could probably make the argument that, the Spanish and the Portuguese and all that stuff, they sent out their own fleets to explore and settle and things like that. But you always hear about specific people, and not necessarily, um, the Spanish war fleet of whatever
Right.
versus, Columbus or, Vasco da Gama or whatever. And I think that it's just a drive that people have, that some people have, that others. I mean, and you look at, there's always that spirit of competition too, because I think that's the other missing ingredient that a lot of people have, is that nobody wants to compete anymore, because
Because it's
competition is,
because it's not
yeah,
nice. It's not
yeah, it's not
nice.
nice. They're talking about, you look at like Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin versus Elon Musk and SpaceX. And yes, they're billionaires, but I think the reason why there's such a strict, or why there's such a huge push to get to space, is not just because, they want to make a profit of what they do, but they're not peddling products in the same way that, like Amazon and Walmart do, which is kind of a weird comparison to make. But like, they're providing a service to further exploration, and I think that that's kind of similar to, maybe not exactly similar to like the East India Trading Company and stuff like that, but like, um I think it kind of spurs people, because those are the ships that you're going to be sailing on. The next explorers going into outer space are going to be sailing on. Basically,
Right.
they're building the
Absolutely.
ships that are going to be taking the next batch of human beings who have that desire to keep going out and keep doing things and keep learning things. And honestly, I feel like those are probably going to be the people that pull us out of this apathy that we have right now with everything.
I
Um,
hope so.
I think there's an element of megalomania to it.
yeah,
And I
And
don't
that's
even say
okay
that as like
though.
a, oh, exactly. I'm not even saying that as a negative thing. It's
Right.
that I have this crazy idea and I'm just fucking crazy enough to try it. I'm just crazy enough to do it. Um, I think too, it's fair to say that we're probably talking about a very small slice
Yeah.
of humanity, but that's also not necessarily a bad thing either, because with exploration, I know there was a little bit of a discussion between you and Alex, regarding class and the importance of class.
Hmm.
And you think about, I'm probably going to be hopefully starting a family very soon within the next year, and I am not going to be a rich man. I will not be a rich man. Okay, it's just that's not in the cards for me unless something unexpected occurs,
All right.
and I'm okay with that. I'm not
Me
going to be able
too.
to send my son or daughter all over the world to travel here and travel there. None of them are going to be able to rock and roll like Emmy Rothwell does, right? So that said, God bless that guy. I fucking love that dude. Um, that said, I will be able to bring them books. I will be able to give them the entire world between printed pages, right?
Right. And
Mm.
And
ideas.
that is still the exploration impulse, right? I think about my own grandfather who read widely and would read the dictionary cover to cover in his free time just to expand his vocabulary and things of that nature. That is the exploratory impulse. I joke with my wife that we're going to raise the next Carl Sagan. That's my goal. And if anybody doesn't know about Carl Sagan, he grew up very poor, not very poor, but he grew up poor in a Brooklyn apartment, but his parents gave him everything possible to read, everything possible to learn, took him to museums, and all the things that are available in New York. I'm not in New York City, obviously, but I mean, I'm going to do everything I goddamn can to promote the exploratory impulse.
Right. And you know what? I was fortunate that I had a family that was very much like that. My grandmother on my mom's side, who, basically took care of me when I was young, was a history teacher, just like you, and she insisted I feel like my earliest memories were her dragging me to museums and
Yeah.
um, you know, taking me to, Count Dracula's castle up in Transylvania and showing me all these grave sites from like the Dark Ages and older Roman columns that are still around. And I
Yeah.
remember as a kid when I was even when I was in Romania, so before I was 7, right? I remember going. There's a natural history museum in Bucharest called the Antipa Museum, and it's still there. And I went to that museum so many times as a little kid that 30 years later, which was last year, right? I went to it for the first time since I was 6, right? And I remembered how to navigate it. You know what I mean? It was
Nice.
like built into my brain, like I remembered, it's completely updated and different now, but I still remember like parts of it. You know, and Cormac McCarthy, the writer, the probably the last great American writer, he said that books are made of books. And in his last novel before he passed away, The Passenger, there's a line where he talks how people that read the same book are like brothers. They share the same blood in a way. And that's a big thing to me. I really believe that. And
Yeah.
when I was in Bucharest, I was in my other grandma's house, and she has a bunch of old stuff from, she ended up, when my other grandma moved to the US, she took a lot of her stuff and saved it. And I was looking through books, and I found a bunch of books that had annotations written by my grandfather that passed away when I was 5.
Woo.
And I was like, whoa,
That's
this is
gold.
this is his signature. This is,
Yeah.
and I took him back and I started reading him, and I'm like, I am reading something that my grandfather that was there when I was born, that raised me, read, something that he found important enough or interesting enough to make notes in. And damn, that's a powerful thing. And I want to also uh, push this, hopefully instill the curiosity of just learning in my daughter. And I want her to, read something I write or read something that I read, because some of the best memories I have of, my father passed away when I was 20, but before he passed away, one of the things he always used to do is he used to always go to like used bookstores. That was like his thing. And he'd always find books that he thought I would like, and he would give them to me. And they're just like beat up used paperbacks and stuff. And I still have most of them, and I love them because these are things that he read and that I will always identify with him. It's a connection that I share, you know? And there's a magic in this transmission of knowledge and a transmission of like culture that exists between, a level of intellectual media that I think that we need to treasure. And one of the fears I have living in our current and shitified digital age is that we're going to lose a lot of this stuff because of the vaporware, way of the way we do things now, how we don't really save books anymore and we don't save things anymore. Everything's plastic and disposable and online behind a screen of glass, and that kind of terrifies me in a way. And I've started collecting actual hardcover books again because I want them to be there. I want them to be solid. I don't want them to be Tesla pieces of shit that are disposable. You know what I mean? I want
Yeah.
them to be a fucking thing that like I can leave behind. I want to take up space. I want to leave a column. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and you look at, probably the three of us grew up in the internet, the birth of the commercial internet era.
Ugh.
Yep.
And so many of those early websites that we spent time on
Are
don't
gone.
exist anymore. They're gone, you know, probably thousands, millions of words on forums and MySpace and LiveJournal. They're just gone, disappeared forever. There's no trace, right? And that terrifies me in a way when you think about it, right? Because you as a historian, Fisto, as his history teacher, primary sources tended to be letters between people, right? And diaries and stuff. And those don't exist anymore.
I have a thought though. This is I don't know what you would call this thought, but I'm gonna flip that terror on its head for a moment.
All right. Make me feel better.
So when the power goes out, right, and the internet goes away and the internet gets deleted or whatever. Oh, thank God no one's gonna have a copy of all that dumb shit we did for 50
But my
years.
Substack post, bro.
It strikes me. And I don't know what has been created that exists solely on the internet that needs to exist for all time. I figure history is probably going to figure that thing out. Like, I don't know if there's a early 21st century version of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations that's floating out there
It's
that's
called the
going to
pu- it's
somehow.
called it's called the Pussy by Delicious Tacos,
Yeah,
dude.
see, I was gonna go with the Ted Kaczynski Unabomber
Oh yeah.
manifesto. That's what I was gonna go with.
Well, that's pre, I think.
That's pre. Okay, that's fair. But like you can't turn books off. There's no off switch on books, right? And collecting all these things and collecting all of the knowledge and collecting all of the things that have guided us to this point, that's all still going to be there. Like none of that has disappeared. Like none of that has completely disappeared. I know that there's, libraries are closing and like, knowledge is being lost in certain cases, but there's probably still quite of a lot that's going to survive should the internet get turned off. And maybe on the flip side, I hate to say it, but essentially I'm making the joke that we were born in the wrong era and that anybody with half a brain had better be keeping hard copies of their stuff because, if the entire internet goes away and none of it survives, the handful of us that wrote stuff down and kept it offline are going to be the victors that get to write the history books because no one
Right.
else is
Hmm.
going to know any better. They're just going to have our stuff. They're going to go, well, Phistos says that all of these thinkers and all of these people were raging freaking morons. And since we don't know any better, well, we just have to trust him. I'm
Right.
basically going to be what Plutarch, right? I'm going to be shit posting the fuck out of everybody, but because I printed it off the internet and wrote it down,
God help us if you end up
yeah,
being
right.
Plutarch. We're
Right.
fucked
So,
if that.
so Alexander and Isaiah are clearly two of the great heroes of the era, and let me explain why. I'm just gonna Dante's Inferno this shit. Fuck
Right.
it.
The great thinkers of the early 21st
Yeah,
century, the
yeah.
Dark
Phistos,
Age.
Phistos Inferno. Literally, all of the presidents after, from Woodrow Wilson on, were literally just prostitutes. Literal Like, no, I'm teasing. I'm being silly now. But
Well,
I don't know. Maybe that's the cheery version of it. Like, think of the opportunity cost if we delete the internet.
right. Maybe we
I
need
don't
to
know. I
start
don't know.
Maybe we need to start a Substack pen pal actual letter writing club or something like
Men
that.
of
That
letters.
would be
Yes,
that would be cool.
the men
Yeah.
of letters. The men of
Station
letters.
stationary is a very I feel like that's kind of becoming with a lost practice, like
Oh
having
yeah.
actual letters, handwritten letters with nice pens, and
Oh man, my
you know,
handwriting is terrible.
Mine is horrible too. Everybody's gonna laugh at me. I probably type it up and send it. You know what's
Well, I mean, we
interesting?
might as well do. Hey, actually, let's compromise, gentlemen. Typewriters. We'll get mechanical typewriters,
hell,
Okay,
hell yeah,
absolutely.
and then
I'm
we can
down with that.
sign them, and then we can sign it when we're done. So at least that's like, it's a nice
We
compromise.
got to get like the wax seals and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or alternatively, we could get manservants
right.
that we dictate to, and
I'm
they write out, dictated, not read,
I'm gonna
We
build a
could have
column out of concrete and you know
and just inscribe your
a
triumphs on it.
Trajan's
No, I think
column
that's a
of
great idea.
my life.
Yeah.
Well, so we've got about another
Yeah.
15 minutes left, and I wanted to actually kind of still go on this topic. And we can always talk about this kind of stuff and almost become fatalistic or almost black pill, I guess, which I'm not
Yeah.
really into that.
No fucking black pilling.
No black pilling allowed, all right? And one
No,
of the things we
never.
always want to talk about, I think, is okay, so what? So what do we do? All right, what do we do? And um,
Yes. What do
you
we do?
have these guys on Substack, and I don't know if you saw my kind of pilly post the other day that everybody's like, oh, well, whatever, right? My point of that post was not
The
that you
black
shouldn't
dog?
write. Yeah, the black dog, right? It
Yes.
wasn't that you shouldn't write, is that like you shouldn't black pill. I'm tired of hearing fucking black pills, man. And it was actually aimed at one person on Substack that I don't
Ooh.
know, sometimes gets on my nerves. But
Were you substacking the Substack?
in a way, I'm a Substack in the
Subtweeting the
Substack.
Substack?
And
Anyway,
it's just like
go on.
one of the things I always like to do now is like you say it's okay, we got it. This is the problem. Well, what's the solution? You bring up a
Yes,
problem. Let's
always.
let's talk about the solution, right?
Congratulations, you get to fix it.
Right. And I think one of the things is that like I think ultimately a lot of our issues are spiritual issues, right?
Agreed.
And
Mhm.
Yes.
I'm not going to go into the whole like okay, what Christianity or whatever, right? I think we can say that a just a general spiritual issue, right? To where there isn't a pride, there isn't a patriotism, there isn't a sense of self or sense of being in people anymore because we've become consumer bugs in a way. If you look at everything, people will say, oh, Boeing is going to shit because they hired a bunch of Indian H-1B visas or whatever, right? Well, you can't blame the Indian guy that just wants a better life and a job, right? Who you blame is the guy that hired them because he wanted to
Why would
save
you?
money. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yep.
that's the
Yes.
thing. It's like if deep down in everything, and this is where I, become a lefty, is in a consumer society, the idea is to put out as much cheap slop as quickly as possible, and we've gotten rid of quality, and it's all about quantity, it's all about plastic, it's all
Right.
about disposable. And back when I was in my 20s, and we're all probably the same age. You remember the hipsters, right? Our flannel wearing friends from,
Yeah.
California and Portland, right?
Yes.
The
Up
hipsters
against the
used
wall.
the hipster. Well, there you go. See, okay, here's the thing, right? The hipsters used to get a lot of shit, right? And I guess I was a bit of a hipster myself, but the hipsters get a lot of shit because oh, they're into stuff. But I think the hipsters had it right. I think the hipsters are the last good subculture. And I think that a mindset from the hipsters should be embraced. And the mindset is that we should focus on the small and the high quality, right? I
Mhm.
think that we should, one way to defeat the plastification and the enshittification of everything is, you know what? Don't shop at Starbucks. Get your coffee at the small coffee shop, all right? Or even better, all right? Get the best coffee making tools you can have and make amazing coffee and have your friends over for great coffee, all right? Become that coffee hipster, embrace it. Become that tea hipster, embrace it, right? Make it into a ritual, right? Make it to where you have a thing where you and your friends enjoy coffee together, make it into an event, right? You don't need to go to the drive-through and slurp slop while you're driving to your shitty job, right?
Yeah.
Wake up 10 minutes earlier and make yourself a mocha pot of much better coffee and sit down, look out the window and enjoy a cup of coffee. I think that that's what we need to do. I think we need to stop and become more deliberate, and we need to self-reflect on everything we do, everything we buy, and go, is this of quality? And it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
expensive. but it has to have a certain level of meaning and be non-disposable. I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
my view, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. The way that I've been thinking of it and the way that I've been conceiving of it is kind of flipping it around the other direction. I'm trying to be more purposefully inefficient.
Right. Well,
Stop
that's
obsessing with the fastest, quickest way to get there. If I get lost driving somewhere, no worries. I'll just turn around.
yeah,
It's no
you'll
big
get there
deal.
eventually.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to take the scenic route. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to cook like this. Oh, if we mess it up, no big deal. Let's just try again.
Yeah.
And stop freaking out of, ah, you know, the getting to the answer, getting to the end. Like, no, I'm not just gonna go wank one out. Like, we're gonna go out to dinner, we're gonna hang out, we're gonna drink, I'm gonna talk with my spouse, we're gonna, do it properly.
Right. You're not
Trust your
gonna.
instinct, trust being a human.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can buy a nice bottle of like liquor and way cheaper and throw it together, right? But it would be
Right.
much better if you go and pay a fantastic bartender to be part of the experience.
You know what would be even more fantastic?
You become the fantastic
I
bartender.
was gonna say moonshine.
Exactly.
Moonshine in the bathtub.
Okay,
Right.
Bucket.
that's bootlegging,
Bucket.
and I approve.
Yes.
Diesel,
Raise
huffing,
raise hell, praise Dale. We're
huffing
bringing it back.
diesel fuels in a bathtub.
Do it.
Okay.
Don't even just do it. Just do
Just
it.
go for it. Lick that paint.
Guys, why are you still listening to this podcast? Go moonshine immediately.
Right.
Yes,
But
yes, it's an American tradition.
that's
Actually,
the
it's a
thing.
for that.
That's the thing. I think we do need to focus on the small. I said the hipsters had it right. And most of the hipsters
Yeah.
have become creepy. Like, well, like they've all become right wing. There's a huge. There's how people say that like the political spectrums tend to be a circle and they tend to meet somewhere in the middle. I think that one place where like the weird younger right and the hippie left meet is over at farmers markets. You know,
Hmm.
because everybody kind of shares a lot of same kind of concepts over there. Usually anti-vax, pro-natural stuff. Anti-seed oils, homeschooler types. That's where the right and left meet. In the alternative circle, the hipster circle, and like the trad and the hippie. But I think that's the key, man. I think that we need to focus on the small and avoid the slop. I think there was a comment made by Alexander on Substack, and we talked about the AI thing, and everybody's like, "Oh, the AI stuff did not take everybody's jobs away." Well, of course not, because it's trash,
Right. It took all the
right?
trash away. Now it's a different flavor of trash.
Right. It's basically just trash. It didn't take away any quality. It just spammed the internet with ugly, generic, crappy fucking art. All right.
Yeah.
And it's hideous and disgusting looking, and it looks cheap and trashy. And it's
It has a
basically,
look. Like it all has that
yeah,
glistening look. Like
it
it's
looks
clearly not
horrible.
real.
And as soon as you see
Nobody drew
somebody
that.
use it, you're like, I hate these fucking people because I hate it. I can't
Right.
stand it.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing. It's like, I think that we just need to become aesthetes, right? That's my goal. All right. This is what I say. And I gave the advice online and I got some pushback, but a lot of people agreed was that if I were to give advice to somebody what to do for your generic middle class 20-year-old right now is read a lot. Read 100
Yes.
books in 1 year. All right. Read a lot, work out, fix your body, and what was the third one I said? Read, lift. Damn it, I forgot what the last one was.
Right, I would say right.
Not, it wasn't right. What did I say? I'm
The
just
Plato school. The Plato school of goading.
right. That exactly right.
Read, write, and lift.
Right. And
Why do they have like a mental image of Fisto playing with a thing of Play-Doh? I know. Sorry, that was a terrible joke.
No, it's more like snacking on it.
It is. It is kind of tasty. I
Yeah.
knew that
I
as a
mean,
kid.
who didn't eat Play-Doh as a child? Am I right?
right,
At least tasted
right.
it, and then somebody slapped me, and he was like, "No!"
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly. If you didn't try Play-Doh as a child, you probably don't
it's
have the full human experience.
Right.
it's
I mean, it
natural
tastes good.
curiosity.
No, so my
That's what it
three
is. That's what it is. Read, lift, eat Play-Doh.
right. So what it really was read, lift, and go out into nature, disconnect from the world, disconnect from
Yeah.
everything,
Go out into
right?
nature. Yes,
That
read.
that was the third one. And I think that, you know what, is not the best advice and it's kind of retarded and dumb and simple, right? But I think that those three things will make you a better person immediately, right?
And confirm. I've started doing all of those things
Right. And that would make me
earnestly
a better
this
person
year.
if I focused on
Yes.
doing that this year,
Yep.
because I don't
It
read
does.
enough and
100%.
I don't go out as much anymore because I'm tired all the time. And, I haven't lifted as much as I should and I'm getting fat, which is horrendous. I'm going to take Ozempic pretty soon because of that. No, I'm not going to do that ever.
Please
Um,
don't. Please don't. Just go
but
eat less and
seriously, if
exercise more.
you get your kids to do that, if you get your children or young men, young women to read books, right? Read as much as you can, experience, get the empathy from the novel, read the great novels. You will build curiosity and just knowledge that sometimes comes out of nowhere, and one leads to the other. And then, by having a healthy physical body, you can put things to action. And then on top of that, forcing yourself out of the nest of comfort by going on a hike or going on a long walk or just putting your body through the motions of fighting just gravity itself. That right there is really all a human needs. Everything else will come from that, I think. And maybe because I'm a determinist, philosophical Christian that believes that God will provide, consider the birds. It's
Mhm.
just, you do that, you put yourself in that position where you have knowledge and you have the physical will, you will succeed in life. At least you will move towards happiness. And that's really what matters. It's not about money, it's about that sense of self and that sense of happiness that matters. You know what I mean?
Yep,
Hmm. Yeah.
totally agree.
Totally agree.
But in other news, any new
So,
new movies you've seen?
yes.
Anything? We'll talk about the pop culture world for a bit. Any interesting? Do
Oh,
you see anything cool?
oh yeah, 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 yeah. So, we're on a movie kick recently, and we watched Cleopatra, the old school
The one with
Elizabeth Taylor.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh my God. It's so good. I don't even care. Historical accurate, whatever. I don't even care. The movie was fantastic. It's that big old Hollywood, gigantic sets, like, and just getting that the vibe. The vibe
That
is so good. Dude,
studio
the guy
era
that got to play
production.
Julius Caesar is just he's swinging his dick at everybody. I fucking love it. It's just so fun. It's just a fun movie. It's a cool movie. And like man, there's I'm gonna dude, it's a four hour and 15-minute movie, and I'm just sitting here going, man, I'm gonna watch it again this weekend. Fuck it.
Didn't it
Like
flop?
I don't even care. I
I
don't know
think it
what it
flopped.
did.
Yeah.
I don't, dude, I've never seen it before, and I loved it. One of my favorite scenes at the end is when spoilers, when Mark Antony, after Mark Antony dies, and this soldier comes up to Augustus to tell him Mark Antony's dead. And he said, Mark Antony is dead. And then the freaking soliloquy Augustus goes on. The soup is warm. The soup is cold. Mark Antony is dead. Why do you say it like that? And then he throws out his arms. Mark Antony is dead. Like he just roars. He's like a man of never to be seen again. And he's like, that's how you need to say Mark Antony is dead. A man like that. Like, oh my God, it's that old Hollywood, man. I freaking loved it.
Right.
Even if everyone thinks it's garbage, you're wrong. I don't even care.
Right. I'm
And
sure it's
also,
great.
dude, also, I did not realize Elizabeth Taylor was so fucking hot. Holy shit. Holy shit. Where have I been all my life? Like, I'm going back in time. I'm not killing Hitler. I'm banging Elizabeth Taylor. Fuck all y'all.
That's the only reason you want a time machine. I mean,
Yeah, nah, man. Kill Hitler. No, whatever. It's
well,
fine.
I've,
Don't
I've
worry
been on an
about it.
old
Don't worry
I've
about
been
it.
on an old movie kick myself. I said I
Yeah.
watched the swimming pool and
What actually legitimately good movies have you watched compared to this guy?
yeah. Uh,
No, go for it, man. Go for it.
I
What you
watched
got?
the swimming pool. I watched two French movies recently. The Swimming Pool, which is La Piscine, which is a great movie, really weird movie. It's you know, it's got gorgeous actresses in it, and it's about this couple in the French Riviera. They're like the French Mediterranean, and they're kind of weird and a little bit like there's some tension going on. And for
Yeah.
some reason, the girlfriend, he kind of invites himself, her ex-boyfriend, who's this music producer, and he shows up in his like fancy like Maserati, and it's just he's this like kind of like player, like party playboy, and he brings his 18-year-old daughter to him with him, who's a total smoke show. So now the boyfriend
Smart show. That's great.
played by Alain Delon, he is getting jealous because they've got history, and then his girlfriend has history with this new guy that rolls up. So he starts kind of like sliming up on the daughter, and it's just all around weird. And it's one of those French like kind of like semi-expressionist movies, but it's just a gorgeous movie. Like it just probably one of the sexiest movies I've ever watched. It's worth it. It's on HBO Max. You can watch it. And then I watched another Alain Delon movie, Le Samurai, which is about a basically a hired killer, and he's very like meticulous. It's very film noir in a way, but also expressionist and also very modern. And he basically assassinates this guy, and he kind of gets picked up by the police, and all these women are involved in kind of the plot, and he gets betrayed by like his fixer, very like cyberpunk in theme, and then he kind of like goes around killing the people that betrayed him, and it ends in a very French fatalistic kind of way, and they're both good. And I think I went to the theater and saw the new Inside Out movie.
Oh, geez.
Well, I
How was
have,
that?
you know what? It was good. It wasn't as good as the first one. Um, I think Alexander made fun of it because he liked it, but he pointed out that this is a movie about a girls' hockey team in San Francisco, and the main character is the only white girl on the team, which is just completely unbelievable. It's like having a inner city basketball movie where the main character is black and the team's all white.
Yeah. That's
Um,
just also hockey. Really?
right, hockey, like okay, but whatever. It was a decent movie. It was interesting. Definitely one of the better like kids movies I've seen recently. I go see a lot of kids movies because I have a kid, and my favorite of the kids movies I've seen in the last year or so, I think was Puss in Boots. That was the my favorite one. And the Ninja Turtle movie
Classic.
was good too. How about you, Isaac? See anything cool?
Uh, Honestly, I have been chasing the feeling I've had since seeing Top Gun Maverick a couple years ago, and I haven't found anything since.
I haven't
Um,
seen that one.
so I would actually say it's probably better than the first one. But then again, this is like that. I think that was like the last movie that I saw in theaters, which was actually, incidentally, I got COVID immediately after getting it, so that if that tells you anything. But the I guess the big thing about Top Gun Maverick for me is number one, I love airplanes. If that wasn't already obvious earlier in the discussion, I don't know what else to say, but um, I do a lot of flight sim stuff and things like that. So this was kind of a real treat for us. The plot is predictably far fetched because there are so many other ways of doing things in that movie than sending five F-18s to blow up an airstrip. But anyway, I digress. The cinematography is amazing. The musical score is amazing. The thing that I really like about it is that you can kind of see how Maverick has matured as a person and as a pilot. Um, it's a it's a big step away from the I guess the pop culture sexiness of the 80s movie of the original to
Oh,
a
yeah.
more
Kid's all grown
aged.
up.
Yeah, it's more, he's kind of getting to the end of his career as an aviator. He's still trying to push the limits, which is kind of interesting when we bring up this discussion. But like, um, it's very well done. The cinematography is amazing. The fact that they use a lot of practical effects, although there is some CGI in there, obviously. Um, it's a stunning movie. But like I said, I haven't really found anything that has captured my attention quite as much as that one. The one movie that I have watched recently, it's one that I go back to kind of semi often, is Ad Astra with Brad Pitt.
Okay.
And a lot of people complained that it wasn't the movie they thought it was going to be because it kind of sold itself as an action movie, a sci-fi action movie, and it really isn't an action movie. It's got a little bit of action here and there interspersed, but it's more of a commentary about a father-son dynamic set against the backdrop um of outer space.
Hmm.
It's basically about this guy Roy McBride going and trying to find his father, who is the head of something called the Lima Project, which was meant to go out to the far reaches of the solar system, away from the sun, away from everything else, away from, out past the heliopause, so that they could actually look at other star systems and try and capture images of other planets to see if they could find intelligent life. And his relationship with his father is non-existent by this point, because his father had left like 29 years prior and had never been heard from. But there was some kind of an accident with the craft that they were using, and it's causing, like, I guess, waves of energy that are uh disrupting all the infrastructure in the solar system by that point. And it's funny because it's told from Roy's perspective, and it kind of goes through his inner monologue and stuff like that about um his relationship with his father, his relationship with other people, his relationship with the space program, um, how humanity is kind of, it takes a very pessimistic kind of view of space exploration in a sense, because what it kind of boils it down to, and what I'm afraid of is that it's kind of leaning in that direction as we go forward into space, and hopefully we eventually colonize the moon and things like that. He said the spaceport on the moon was kind of a amalgamation of everything that we had left behind on Earth, and that it was more like a shopping mall and an airport than a place where you would expect to find people, going to Mars or to other space stations spread throughout the solar system. And but as the farther out that he gets away from Earth, the moon, Mars, and things like that, the more introverted and more introspective he becomes, and it's actually, he becomes very isolated at one point. um and he finds his father. His father's still alive. He finds out that there was an accident, there was a mutiny. He tried to stop it, it didn't work out, and he tries to bring his father back. But the thing that they find out about the program is that and I'm sorry, I'm probably spoiling it, but I also want to be like, this
Spoilers, deal with it.
yeah,
No,
this is
this is
spoilers
not
for,
a spoiler-free zone. We spoil
yeah.
things here.
But he gets out there and he finds out his father never found intelligent life. Every planet they looked at was barren. Every single one of them was lifeless. It didn't have anything to tell them that there was anything that was out there that existed. And his father stayed out there because he couldn't bear the shame of going home empty-handed. So he kept looking and looking and looking. People wanted to go home. They fought him. They had the big schism or whatever, and then the accident occurred, and that's why he's out there. And you know, they have their father son moment where he's trying to explain to him, why he did it, why he left his son behind. And, of course, Roy, being the dutiful son, is like, I still love you, dad. He's like, whatever. Okay. So he tries to go back home with him. And his father, who's played by Tommy Lee Jones, uh, he decides he can't bear the shame of going back to Earth with all of it. So he just is like, you have to let me go. They're trying to get to his son's rocket, and he shrugs away from him, and he just goes off into outer space and dies, presumably. Um, but it was very interesting because I don't really see a whole lot of those kinds of discussions anymore in pop culture between, the relationship between an estranged father and an estranged son. And I think there's this interesting sort of, I think maybe that's one reason why it wasn't so popular to begin with, was because it touched on a very sensitive subject where,
Hit too close to home for a lot of people.
yeah,
Right,
because
right.
because I'm not especially close to my dad. My relationship with him growing up was far different than what it is now. I'm a lot closer to him now than I was then, but there's always going to be that barrier between us that, I think that's really the kind of the thing is, I found that was what was tugging at me more than, the views of Neptune and things like that. And I think it was interesting because at the end of the movie, he kind of goes back and reevaluates his life and his what he does to keep people out, because he realized he ended up being more like his father than he wanted to be. He swore up and down he would never be like his father, and that's exactly what he became in the first place. And it's funny because it's almost like it's a protective mechanism in a way, because we start to push people out, or some people will start pushing each other out to try and preserve some sort of independence. And what ends up happening is we start realizing that we have to kind of trust each other in some way, or be vulnerable with each other in some way. And and a lot of people don't want to share that, and that's understandable. I mean, today's society especially is brutal when it comes to showing any sign of vulnerability with each other.
Right.
So it's but I thought it was interesting, and it's not a movie for everybody, I don't think. There's some really interesting, I guess, if you're into like the designs of some of this stuff, it's very much a NASA punk thing. There's a chase scene on the moon where they're being chased.
NASA punk.
Oh yeah, no, it's absolutely NASA punk, because they're on like these old school moon rovers being chased across the surface of the moon, getting shot at, and it's very, very good. I guess technical design in some ways. Um, there's a lot of there's a lot of rockets that have, when they're going between planets, they have radiators out and everything, and it's just really interesting to see. It's just that I think a lot of people got upset with it, dealt with a heavier subject than most people were comfortable with, and it also wasn't an action movie. So
Right. It wasn't a Brad Pitt action movie. You know what? I'm gonna put that
yeah,
on my to watch list soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out too.
But you know what,
yeah,
though? I don't know if you hear it over here, but there's a thunderstorm starting right
Oh,
above me.
yeah. It's yeah. I mean, you're in what, Bluffton?
Yeah, it just
Yeah,
started. I just saw some lightning and thunder, so I think we gotta.
nice.
There we go. It's gonna be super loud in about a minute, so I guess we have to cut it off because I can't edit away all the thunder and lightning.
yeah.
Um,
That works for me.
eh,
We've got to go on
yeah.
our evening walk before the sun
Do you hear it?
goes down. Nah,
Barely,
I didn't hear
maybe.
anything.
Yeah. Well,
I
it's
do have
good.
one last thing. I do have one last thing
Go
to
ahead,
offer
man.
real quick though before we go. This is very important. I'm sorry to say that the time machine plan to go back and sleep with Elizabeth Taylor has been nixed. On the bright side though, I've been given approval to go back in time and bang and then kill Hitler. So
Okay.
I figure it's kind of a win-win, right?
Right. That's fair. I mean, I don't
That's
know.
fair.
Is it? I don't know. Just don't go
Hey,
back in time. All right. You're gonna get
oh,
arrested. You're
okay.
gonna get arrested by the quantum police or whatever.
The
Okay.
quantum. Oh no, I'm
What's
gonna.
what's those guys in Star Trek? The time police guys.
Or
I was thinking a quantum leap. I mean,
Uh,
that actually might be cool,
and
the temporal, I don't know.
temporal agency or whatever from Star Trek.
right?
All right,
Q.
guys. Hey, man. Isaac,
I'll
thank
just
you for
irritate
joining
Q.
us, dude.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, no,
Had a
that
lot
was
of
great,
fun.
man. No, it was. I didn't feel like it was 2.5
I
hours.
know.
I
You
felt
know
like it
what?
was.
I will. You're always invited, man. All right. And I
Yes.
love, the whole point of doing this is so we can have great conversation. And this is another, I look forward to this now. This is my favorite
Yeah,
thing of the
man.
week. All right. I'm like, man, I can't wait to talk to Fisto and everybody. So you're
Hang
always
out.
welcome. Whenever you have an idea to talk about something, shoot it my way and we'll
Yeah,
do it. I'm gonna be on vacation for a few days, but I'll be back next week. And then definitely, we're going to try to do this every other week because that way we have a lot of stuff to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Especially in this climate. My
Oh
God.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Always things to talk about.
Always things to talk about. And for listeners out there, once again, thank you very much for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. Uh, you know, everything is off the cuff. Everything is fresh off the top of my head and Fisto's head and Isaac's head. And everybody, brings up all kinds of stuff. We don't plan these out really. We just kind of like sometimes we share articles and we kind of plan ahead of time, but for the most part, it's open. Pretty soon, I'm going to be starting doing writer interviews again because I haven't done a writer interview in a while. And that's mostly because I haven't had a lot of time to read. And I don't want to invite anybody whose book I haven't read. But I have a list of books to read of people, and I'm going to. Maybe we'll get Lisa back here. People seem to like
Yes, that's a
her.
great idea.
Everybody. And I'm probably going to get about lightning pretty soon, too.
All right.
But
Yeah, I
all
heard
right,
that.
guys.
Yeah, I think I heard that too.
All right, guys, good night, and see you guys in 2 weeks, all right?
All right. See you, boys.
Later.